Good afternoon, and yet another stream, second time this week. You'll be pleased to hear, anyone who follows me, that I've finally bought a new computer in the Amazon Prime Day sale. So I got 25% off, so I'm happy about that. And it will be arriving next week. And then hopefully I'll be able to stream without any drama. Fingers crossed. Let's see, it looks like I've already got drama, so. But anyway, not much I can do about it. But yeah, hopefully I'll be able to sort things out as of next week or the week after. I wanted to wait until 5 o'clock my time to start this because I wanted to see if we were going to make an 8-hour demand on Bitcoin, which we have. And it's not a good one, and we'll probably flip it, or not probably, we may flip it. If we flip it, then that'll be a short. But yeah, I like to see 8 hours at the top and then get flipped for shorts. Like, so we did have a 4-hour supply, which obviously we've now probably closed inside or above. 4 hours aren't great, but 8 or 12 would tend to be better if you're looking for slightly more confirmation on a reversal. Anyway, there's no sign of a reversal as yet. So we've had this big breakout as of yesterday. Well, big breakout in the grand scheme of things. Everybody gets excited because we have sideways for so long, but really it hasn't gone very far. But it has broken all-time high by a hair. So, and above obviously this channel now. Let me think what I talked about last time. So last time I talked about the fact that we were going to make a 3-day demand, and that if we did, I was looking for either a 3-day demand or a 12-hour supply, and we got the 3-day demand, and it was only by a hair. So you can see this candle, this green candle here, just closed very slightly above that candle, creating the 3-day. But then it makes it again a bit challenging because it's a weak demand. While you don't trade against it, you wouldn't necessarily long right off the top of it, or like even it's up to you. If you want to do that on the higher time frame with a wider stop, that's fine. But again, when I'm looking at the tighter entries, I tend not to do that. And I was also thinking a little bit skeptical about Ether at that point. Can't remember now, but I'll have a look. Also on top of that, this did make this two-week demand, but I think I was preferring maybe a dip deeper inside down to this weekly. Even if it had come all the way to the bottom of that 3-day. I actually might have broken that. It would have broken the 3-day if it had got all the way back down there. But anyway, you don't necessarily get the pullbacks you want, particularly on Bitcoin. So now, and also we've had indices breaking all-time highs and trying to correct, but not doing very much in the way of corrections either as yet. So yeah, this is where we're at now. So we've just had a wick above all-time high. So on the lower time frame, I'll look at that chart in a minute. I was looking for, the possibility of there was a 30-minute supply in here, so the possibility of a rejection there and or the all-time high, but obviously conscious that this is still in a bullish uptrend, both locally and on the macro. So once it had flipped, it did make the weekly supply, but once it had flipped that back to demand, and that was that question mark entry that I talked about for the long side, it then pushed up. So there's no real reason other than the possibility of a swing failure. There's nothing as yet that's telling me, yeah, you should short this. It's basically guessing. Well, I said, sorry, there's nothing on the chart that's telling me that. However, the data is still telling me that. But I still need the chart to actually prove it, because obviously there's OTC buying and things that I don't necessarily see. There's market makers and there's whales and institutions holding up the price. I talked a bit yesterday in the group about ETFs not really buying up here, and somebody said, "Oh, what do you mean today? Or do you mean like didn't they all buy in June?" So yeah, it's a fair point that they all bought like throughout here. And I can't remember, I don't even think it was on that dip. I think it might have been before, and then maybe on this sort of retest, there was a lot of buying going on. So I guess they're already positioned. But similarly, I still kind of want to see them pushing the breakout as well. That's what we got previously. In fact, we got a lot of top longers. I can't remember if it was this one or if it was this one where that box has appeared from. Anyway, could have been in this consolidation back last year, or it could have been this consolidation. I can't remember now, but there were a lot of ETF buying at the top. So you kind of want that to push it, and we're not really seeing that as yet. Nor are we seeing, so we're not seeing spot buying. And I'll go and look at the data in a minute, but yeah, we're not seeing spot buying. We're basically seeing this being driven by derivatives. And a part of this yesterday was also a big short squeeze. So I had looked at I had sort of said, there were 110, there was big walls at 110k. And that was so I wasn't like looking really to short before that. But then when I actually got to 110k, I think I saw somebody else post it, so I don't check the liquidations data, but there was something like 200 million of liquidations as we went through the 110 400 area. So I think that was part of it. So then just looking at the walls quickly, yeah, so that was the kind of wall at 110k that we blasted through. This data, this is the trading light data. They've had real problems with their system for the last few months, so it's still not great. It doesn't give me, only gives me the whole numbers, so I don't know if this is 110k or if it's 110 500. You can see all those say 111k next to it. So the next big wall on Binance here is 115 or thereabouts, whatever without the detail. It's not even that big, like the one at 110 is much bigger. And similarly on Coinbase, what have we got? It's a reasonable size for Coinbase, actually, 200 Bitcoin at 115k. So they're the kind of next walls. The other thing that's kind of made me nervous to the downside is there's nothing. And I was saying that even before, and maybe that's everybody's already bought, they're already positioned, so they don't care. But if you can see, there's at least what has been a decent amount of yellow above, but there's walls can pop up at any time, obviously, but there's only very small walls underneath, so it just makes me a little bit nervous that there's not that kind of support. Like I say, it can pop up, but it's not there just to start with. So if the price does start to fall, there's nothing really to hold it up. So that's just something to be aware of. What else? So then the other data on Bitcoin, not funding, right? So this coinalized data. So you can see we had a spike on spot CVD yesterday, but then if I zoom out, you can see that it's still the CVDs for this. So the top one is the CVD for Coinbase, and you can see that's basically been down since when the 7th of July for this whole run up. So they're not really, so Coinbase buyers aren't really supporting this price move. And I think there's an argument for if price is going up anyway, I guess the aggressive selling isn't there, but still you want buyers to kind of push it higher. So then yesterday on the aggregated CVD spot, the second one, which I guess is like includes Binance, it did have a bit of a spike on the spike. But most of this is the future stablecoin margin contracts. That's the one that's running with the price and supporting the price. And even with coin margin contracts, OI is falling and CVD is falling. Sorry, CVD is falling in the bigger picture. We still need to see the chart support anything to go short, because obviously it can still get pushed up regardless of this. And you can see OI is still rising, so I guess that kind of supports the upward price. But the problem is, so what we had yesterday on this spike, you can see, so we didn't actually have that many short liquidations here. Even though that people are saying that was short liquidations, I'm not actually seeing that in the data particularly. I think I saw it somewhat on Bybit. But Binance, had a whole bunch of longs go in and a whole bunch of shorts go in on this rise. Now, a lot of the shorts have closed since then. Maybe they've been liquidated, but it doesn't, no, they shouldn't have been liquidated, really. It looks like they've just been closed because the price obviously hasn't gone past that wick, and they came down after that. So they've kind of basically just been closed, but also obviously there's a lot of longs that have gone in there, and what we do want to see when we see a reversal is people top longing. I've said this multiple times that even through all of this, when we were sort of considering should we be bearish, I was like, well, there aren't enough longs in this. And again, I don't know if I'm able to zoom out in full on this, but if you zoom out on this, these longs, they're probably up now. Maybe I'll go to the higher time frame so we can see. If we look at it since that last low, down to 100k. So you can see that there haven't really been, compared to previously, there weren't really that many longs going in. And if I zoom this right out, then back to where we've had previous highs, there've been a lot more longs previously, like even on this run in May, had a lot more longs than the rest of this section here. Now we have had a bunch go in at this high, which is good for shorters or for bears, because then potentially they can get taken out. But again, we still need to see the structure support that. We still need to see the price chart actually support shorts there. Just double check any comments. So anyway, so what we see with that, and I think that's, let me just look at Bybit, I guess, just to see quickly. Bybit, the stable coin one. So still the higher time frame, the 4-hour. So yeah, you can see we had some longs go in there, but all the shorts really have got taken out just through this whole consolidation, or they've been closed. So there's not really any shorts. There's still some shorts on Binance that could push an up move, but not so many on Bybit. And even the longs on Bybit aren't great, to be honest. I don't know if Bybit's really as used as it was previously. I tend to use Binance more, but I need to probably look at CoinMarketCap to see which is the most used derivatives exchange at the moment. Yeah, so anyway, that's that. But then if we look at the liquidation data, so again, Binance liquidation data, and it varies depending on, so I'm looking at the 3-day at the moment, which basically shows obviously all the longs that are gathered below all the long liquidation. So again, like this could really propel a drop if price is ready to drop. If I go to the lower time frame, let's go 48-hour, you can see, or even like 24-hour, you can see more that they're kind of just balanced above. Obviously, there's a bunch of liquidations from people who shorted in this area. Surprisingly, it didn't take out that low at the first one on the wick. That normally is what happens. So again, maybe being held up. But yeah, just running in a sideways range here. But yeah, with liquidations above and below. But if I looking at the higher time frames, obviously the below are finally much more prominent. Big liquidations at 106. But yeah, that's a long way down. And I guess you can at least see on this that those liquidations that were around that 110k mark, where that wall was, like all got blasted straight through. So yeah, so anyway, there's nothing. So obviously liquidations above and below, the longs. So if all the data doesn't really support me thinking this is going to go up. However, I do need to see structure flip or something. So anyway, you can see there was a tiny 4-hour supply in here, very weak, and it's flipped to demand. We kind of joked that it was probably too easy, so now we've got this 8-hour demand in there. The other thing I was looking at, which is just kind of interesting, is Korea and all the other pairs. So let me just show you quickly So obviously, Korea is doing a bit of analysis there. I'll show you that in a minute. But obviously, Korea is still on the lower high. So it's broken out of this local triangle, but it's a lower high from even the May high, and then obviously a significantly lower high than all-time high. The pound chart is the same, pushing a little bit higher structurally than Korea now, but again, still far off all-time high. Now, it does have this 3-month demand in here. Note, while it looks like this is support, but yes, it can be support, but these tests are after it confirmed. Sorry, before it confirmed. It hasn't tested this level since it confirmed. And it was a comment I made in the group as well, that it was kind of interesting that the 3-month demand on these pairs was a lot closer than the one on the US dollar pair. Similarly, Euro, I think Euro might have tested this. Yeah, so Euro has tested the top of that 3-month demand. This is for what it's worth, because I haven't looked at these in detail in the past to know if they're useful indicators, but I just found it interesting that none of these have broken all-time high. And the observation from that is that is the US dollar pair breaking all-time high more than these because of the weakness in the dollar. And now the dollar's reversing, and what does that mean? And I haven't really got an answer to this question yet, but it's just something to think about, So maybe, I guess if the dollar reverses, that means Euro is going to get weaker, so maybe these will push up a bit later. But as we've said previously, to go back to Korea, the yen, is the same. So the yen actually is looking a little bit stronger now. And I think the yen is getting a bit stronger today, actually, so that doesn't make any sense. I was going to say, is the yen getting weaker today? But I think the yen is actually, let me look at my yen charts quickly. Yes, you see Euro yen is dropping, so that's Euro Euro weakness / yen strength. Aussie yen is still running a little bit, but pound yen has dropped off a little bit, and dollar yen has dropped off a little bit over the last couple of days. But yeah, interesting. So the yen is actually getting a little bit stronger now, except against the Aussie dollar. So yeah, you'd expect this to drop, not rise, but anyway. This obviously is still looking bullish, but I would like to see, so as I've said previously, and again, just to reiterate very quickly for people who don't follow me, back in 2021, what we had was Korea with this wick and this high that we had in October. It didn't take out all-time high, but the US dollar pair did, and then we had another run which did take out all-time high. So that was kind of, and that was when it reversed. So one of the observations I've made for now, for what it's worth, is perhaps we need more time on this for this to take out all-time high. And so all the pairs are structurally aligned before we get a drop. And on that basis, I then kind of measured, and I just measured a few things. And it's difficult because, you know, these are zones, so it doesn't necessarily have to reject at the start of the zone, but I was just interested to see. So sort of 3% to the 5-day supply in here, if I assume the 3 days already been tested, if we just took out this high here. Oh, excuse me. And then if we went to this 2-day level inside the 5-day, that'd be 3.84%. And then if we went and took out all-time high, that would be 8%. And I just kind of transposed those onto the US dollar chart just to see like where we would end up. So if we went up that first 3% with the Korea pair reaching the next zone of interest, we're going to end up around that 113 fib in the red box and at the 115 mark. So that I found kind of interesting. And again, these don't have to exactly tally because obviously it depends what the dollar Korea pair is doing. Yeah, so it's all the interactions. I quite enjoy the triangulation and the interactions between these pairs, but it takes quite a lot of analysis to kind of go and think about what's going to affect what. If we went to the next level on Korea, then we get to, I don't know, around just over 116, and then the 8% would be quite significant, 121%, and interestingly around coming up to this 161 fib for this local consolidation. But anyway, as you know, if we're going to get a rejection, this is kind of the area I'm looking. The red box is the 113. This is if we're going to get a rejection. So like I say, like, clarify, when people hear me say things like this, they say, oh, you're being bearish. And I'm saying, well, I'm not. No, the intent is not to be bearish. It's just to look at areas that might have a reaction. You know, here is one of the other levels I've been looking at, 174K. And that would be on the macro, one of the significant levels I'd be looking at because it's the log 161 and the linear 161 was this red line here. So that was 102 and obviously we kind of just rejected just above that and down into there. But then historically we've come up to the log 161. I think we didn't in the last run, but the two previous maybe. Again, I would need to double check. But just significant fibs to watch. But in the first instance, because historically we've had a lot of rejections at the 113, and you can have them locally. So here, for example, I think this is a one between the 113 and the 127. So again, let me put this on here, extension. So you can see here we had that drop, and then we pushed up, and we went between the 113 and the 127 before the bigger drop. I think here might have been the same. So you can look at the little ones. So again, just between the 113 and the 127 there. And then similarly, the bigger ones, I think this wasn't quite to the 113. Doing that whole thing, yeah, so it was just over the 100. So it doesn't have to go all the way up there. You'll see the same in reverse, like if you fib this, I think this drop, then you get 113 for the bottom as well. I opened this chart on another layout and some of the old things have come back in here. I need to know. I don't know whether to delete them or not. This happens sometimes on TradingView, like just things just reappear on my charts that I deleted centuries ago, and I don't really understand why. And then I'm quite unsure as to whether I still want them, whether they've just shifted in the case of these CME gaps. I feel like I can delete those. And like this, it will be from some random point in time. So you can see it's added some PA from April 2023 for absolutely no reason. Some of my supply and demand zones. I don't really understand why it's done that, but just there. Like obviously it hasn't added anything else. Oh, and this fib at random. So I have no idea why it's suddenly decided to add those. These crosses, I guess, are previous entries or alerts I've had, but again, I just don't know if they've shifted. I'll go and check those later anyway. So yeah, anyway, as I've said, so the 113 to 127 is kind of the area that I'd be looking at for a possibility of a short. The local one is this red box, just for this wave. And the bigger one for this wave is the two black boxes, depending on whether you look at log or linear. So yeah, and the overlap was around the 115 mark. So that's kind of an interesting level to look at anyway. But for now, obviously, we've kind of made this 8-hour demand. We're coming off it. But Korea was pushing more again, which is why I was less inclined to take shorts. and obviously CME's pushing. So we're getting a little bit of pushing there. We've also had US dollar dominance has kind of reached, actually, I was looking at the different aggregated ones, but the tether dominance, which is the one I normally use, again, I was looking at the percentages to the next. So this would be the optimistic for bears. Optimistic zone of interest will be just down in this area. So that would be 1.5%, which is, I don't think these percentages would exactly tally with the Bitcoin percentages, but again, I just thought it was interesting to kind of observe. And then my preferred entry, which I've had for ages and always wanted hit, is this monthly zone just below. And in fact, I shouldn't actually have used that 6-month level at the top there. In fact, this should be lower. So about 7% down. So again, maybe that would tally quite nicely with the 115 mark, whether it's going to do it, like this in a straight line, like I optimistically drew a while ago, or whether we're going to get, a bounce in here and something different. Bounce in here or bounce in there, perhaps before getting to there. That's possible. We've now got significant supply above. We've got 5-day supply. We've got daily supply. It's very messy, and Bitcoin also makes it. Well, that's the other thing to add, that Bitcoin made a 5-day demand. So again, and this is what this is where I find it very challenging, I guess. So this 5-day demand, we had that 3-day. So the 3-day I talked about, but I am much better at shorting. So for 2 reasons, I'm not great at, I don't like longing in resistance or in supply, and I don't like shorting in demand, obviously. But this makes it challenging when you get breakout kind of moves, because it becomes like, I don't want to long here because I feel like a crazy person if I do that. And even longing here, I'd still feel a bit like a crazy person when you look at the bigger picture chart. But then obviously if it does break out and decide to go to 500k, like some people are calling for, then it's kind of annoying if you don't enter. But then also similarly, I work in risk to reward, so it doesn't make a difference to me unless I can get a tight, decent entry with a high probability trade and a high risk to reward. For me, it's just not worth taking the trade. So I'm not overly concerned about whether I'm in this or not, because I'm a trader. Like if you're in this from an investment perspective, then you should be in it from way back down here. Or from, at least one of the higher time frame entries like that weekly there. But if I'm a trader, I think there's more value in trading alts or trading other things that aren't, right at supply or right at resistance like this is. Anyway, so we're going to push there, and Korea's come up over that level now, although so it looks like we're going to go at least for those upper liquidations first. Where's my liquidation? So many tabs open. Let's go and have a look at the lower time frame here. So the liquidations are still kind of a way off. 112,500 and closer to 113,000 now. So that's going to be interesting if we head up there. On the lower time frame, yeah, I mean, there's nothing really new here from what I talked about previously. That we had sort of earlier shorts, which gave a bit of a reaction, and then the possibility of that 30-minute supply. But obviously, I think I commented in the last stream, I'd had that alerted like this is the 4th time, and I said it was a fair chance. Now it's hit so close to it so many times. There's like an hourly and a 30-minute supply that it was fairly likely to go through it. I actually meant to delete the alert, but then I forgot. So anyway, we're breaking out again now. I can delete some of my old zones that I was having for the lower time frames. Yeah, so that's that. So I guess we'll just see what happens, if this gives some structure, if it gives another swing failure here, if it, what are we up to? So we need to get up to 112,800, so a bit higher for where those first set of liquidations are. And or maybe we're going to get up into that 115 level. But again, we'll just see what happens. Ether obviously ran with Bitcoin. Has left the CME gap a bit below, and actually left the CME gap from the weekend. So Ether, I had a few more entries on the lower time frames on this, but from a higher time frame perspective, this was my next zone of interest. but I was a little bit conscious that, if we're swing failing the low of the range here, that we then might take out the high of the range. It's just hard to judge if, if this was taking out the high of the range, this took out the low of the range, and we're just back in range. Obviously, it's had a pause here. Took another little wick higher today to close the CME gap. I can delete that now, just so I just left that there to show you this. This was a gap that was in here from back in June. It's a little bit wick higher to get that. But again, we're still pushing in a bigger uptrend. It had also flipped that weekly demand into the 2-weekly demand. I don't know if it tested it. Yeah, it had flipped and tested the 2-weekly demand. So again, I'm not like overly surprised with this pushing up. It did make the same 3-day demand as Bitcoin, and I would have been I was a bit more inclined to look for longs there because of the distance. Even when it closed this candle, it closed a lot higher, whereas Bitcoin had closed only very, very slightly above it. This closed significantly higher, but then it didn't come back down to test it anyway. And then, yeah, as I've said previously, my next kind of levels of interest will be up around this 3K mark, and this question mark I was hoping would be tested a long time ago, but it was just confluent with this previous 2-month level. So if we had a 2-month supply here, which swing failed, and if price then drops back below, it can just reject that same level that got swing failed. So I thought it was worth, and then also this is confluent with the kind of retest at the bottom of this range. So I thought it was worth an alert there, and that's why it's a question mark, because it's not a zone I would typically trade. And just checking my screen quality. And then, yeah, up inside here again, it's just really, really messy. So there's 3-day, 5-day, weekly, 2-weekly, 3-weekly supply and all sorts up here. I've seen some people kind of more random old what do you call it, TA come back over here, drawings come back over here for some reason as well. So again, either the challenge that we've had is that we had this swing fail of this 2-month supply here. It's got a 3-month demand at the bottom and a 3-month supply at the top, I believe. So it's kind of just bouncing between the range. If we can get back up over here, let's see if I can actually draw it. What's the best time frame to see it on? So I guess what we've got is this kind of central section, moving back from over here, that it held as demand here, it held as demand here, and then dropped back below. There was a bit of resistance there, and again, it's come back as a bit of resistance here. But again, we need to kind of really see like a decent sized move up now and come back and test this. And the problem is you then get back into the sellers that broke this demand. And I'm still bearish on this, like I've said, on the macro, because we have 3 months supply. So if I show you the 3-month chart, the reason I'm bearish is because while we swing failed this 3-month demand down here, but we didn't quite tap into that. I think there was a 2-month maybe a little bit above, so it has tapped into a demand there, but it's in this 3-month supply, and it came off it. So possibly we get a stop hunt of that high and then a drop down. I don't know, but for me, this is more recent than this. So therefore, I'm still inclined to think we're going to get a bigger drop. It's difficult because Bitcoin, crypto doesn't always give you the big drop you want. Like you think you're going to get a decent drop off 3-month supply, and maybe this is all it's going to give. So I think I would have liked to have seen a little bit more than that. So I'm still inclined to the short side on this. But if we are going to make weekly demand like this, I have added a kind of a new, slightly more aggressive entry, and although I didn't get to hit it, just on 2,450. Just if we came back down to test that level, and again we didn't hit that, and I already had this sort of lower one. And that's just if we held in this range. It's difficult when your mid time frame bias is up, because obviously we've had a big drop and we're retracing the drop. We have very unclear supply through here, other than the macro kind of levels. So the mid time frame is up, but the high time frame for me is down. But the high time frame can still mean that we could still go all the way up to here and still have the high time frame be down. And that's the challenge I have. It's like, what's the bias? So really you're just like waiting for levels to get hit, the usual, and you trade them as and when they're hit. So at the moment, we're now, this hasn't made an 8-hour demand like Bitcoin. In fact, was looking a bit weaker a few minutes ago, but it's now obviously following Bitcoin up. It's got that CME gap slightly below. The other extra push was it allowed Ether BTC to hit this 8-hour supply. So yeah, again, I just need to see a bit more from this. I need to see if it's going to, maybe it'll just push through here, in which case I'd be more inclined to buy it to long on demand. But it could still reject here, so we need to give it a little bit more time. Let me also just see what indices are doing as well. Yeah, so yesterday we had this drop on indices, but they rejected off supply, but they came back down just into the local demands on Nasdaq before pushing back up again. Now Nasdaq's obviously consolidating here and is struggling a little bit more of that level, but you can see S&P and the Dow are still pushing, and Euro came up really strongly yesterday as well, as did the FTSE. But yeah, so the indices are being a little bit erratic because of the tariffs and things like that. But again, no significant moves, just kind of real sideways. And obviously they've been stronger previously, so Bitcoin's a bit late to the party if it's kind of following the indices. Okay, where are we up to now? So we've gone up to, yeah, probably taken out those liquidations now. Liquidation chart. Refresh this. A little bit further. Obviously, yeah, so there's a few more now at 1-1, yeah, literally right under 113. So it's pushing up a little bit inside those, which is not overly surprising. But we're really, if you want to short this, you need to see an aggressive move down. So far, obviously, that consolidation we've had since last night isn't aggressive. What I also want to see is more top longs going in. So we've got a bit of spot buying going on now, but we have had a big spike on that on OI. So let's just see what happened. Whether that was longs or shorts going in. Come on, load. Right. Let's go back down to the lower time frame on this. And we're still on Bybit as well. There seem to want to. Reloading. Okay, so Binance. Okay, so we had a big spike of longs again. So there's some people top longing, and I say top, when I say top, I say top in inverted commas, and obviously some shorts going in there as well. So it's kind of a mix, but we haven't seen what we want to see as a drop off in shorts. Not an increase in shorts, because an increase in shorts continues to push the price up. But then there aren't really many shorts to, and that's, I was thinking about that. Like, I'm actually a bit skeptical of that liquidation chart. Because I know it's calculated. I don't think it's not looking at liquidation prices on the books. I think it's calculated from orders. So I guess Bybit's had some spiking, some shorts going in here. But again, like, these shorts aren't getting stopped out yet. So maybe we've got a little bit further to go. But we are getting some top longers in there to trap for later. So that's kind of interesting. Anyway, so that's still running. And you can see we're getting this push on Korea now. So I wouldn't mind seeing Korea coming and taking out, obviously, these wicks, and then a little bit higher, maybe even to take out that high. And then other than that, it's like blue sky for Bitcoin. So US dollar dominance is about to hit that first level of interest. But it's low probability. Like, I do ultimately expect this to go lower. Yeah, so that's that really. And yeah, so finally on Ether for the short side, or the low time frame side. So I had kind of said in the last stream, it was just like, I think I just got bored that I was skeptical about this and this entry that I had. But then I kind of thought, well, it might give a bit of a scalp off there, so I left it in. But it did give a bit of a scalp, so that was fine. And then I also put there was a possibility of a swing failure into, again, there was another level here that hadn't quite been tested, just a 30-minute or something. So I said it was worth watching for a swing failure, but only take it if it was a swing fail, and close back below. And then it did do that on the low time frames, but then didn't manage to break demand, and again just pushed higher. And then this is obviously the next level of interest, which got a nice reaction before pushing up to kind of break that, to close that CME gap. Okay, a bit of a reaction there on Ether. It's kind of interesting because Ether was dropping a few minutes ago when Bitcoin was kind of pushing up, and then now Bitcoin's exploded out. Ether just, and as a result, Ether just remains in range, which is interesting. Yeah, not really a surprising move there, given the consolidation it was doing. It took out the low of the range on Bitcoin. Yeah. So anyway, there's nothing really new on these other than if we go higher and looking at those levels, the 113 to 115. 115 area will be the higher probability potential short on Bitcoin if we get up there. Yeah, so that's that. Then quickly on the majors, because like this is what I kind of look for confidence. I think I commented in the channel yesterday that I did put a more aggressive entry for a short on Litecoin on this 8-hour supply, and it got a little pause but didn't do much, and obviously has now come back through it. Ripple the same. I had Ripple an alert on this 3-day supply here, and again it hit early, and it did hold for a while actually, even with Bitcoin breaking out. But the problem I've had with these, again, this is a higher low. My line has gone red now, but yeah, so obviously this is a higher low. We were looking for a long there and we got it. So the possibility, so we're then expecting potentially a higher high, and it's certainly in the case of Ripple, which is obviously in this macro up structure anyway. The difficulty with some of these is the ones that are in a macro down structure. It's like, well, okay, you've made the local higher low, so does that mean you're going to get a higher high, or are they going to just triangle? So some of these, it was worth putting in the possibility of a short there in case we're going to triangle for another wave down. But obviously, that's not necessarily the highest probability, and as a result, obviously, we're saying Ripple likes to swing fair actually, so it could still very easily swing fair this level if it were. Oh, actually no. So Ripple's left a couple of few equal highs here actually, so I guess it's probably fairly likely that's going to go there. I might actually alert that for a possibility of a short here. Stick an alert on that quickly. On spell today. Yeah, so that's possibility if it just takes out that highs. May or may not give a scalp, but you need to see what the market's doing as and when that hits. Obviously Litecoin's now pushing higher. I need to see where the next possible level with that would be. But again, Litecoin's the same. It's again that slightly challenging scenario. We had the long off the low there. Are we in a market now where we're going to get that move? And these are comments that I've made countless times now on the others chart, that it was exactly the same. We were looking for longs on this higher low here, and then we have the choice, are they going to make a higher high and go back? In case of others, it does have a higher supply that it could test. Or are we just going to do kind of lower highs and then just, fall off a cliff? Again, so it's worth watching for the lower highs. Similarly here, not that one. Here it gives, it gave it enough of a reaction for a trade. Okay, it hasn't broken demand, but at least it gives you a tradable reaction. This one perhaps was a little bit too aggressive, and also probably too aggressive given this bounce hit pretty close to it anyway. So anyway, Litecoin is still pushing. BCH is still in the daily supply. So BCH, I had the previous alert here on 5-day supply, and then it made a daily. It made a 3-day demand that it came off, and then it made a daily supply. So again, I thought it was worth looking for the possibility of a short here in case we're just going to get a bigger correction. I am more bullish on BCH, and also BCH now has this big 3-month demand. So that's really what I want to see tested on this. Hopefully it won't push up, significantly higher before it gets back here. And then TRX, well, I wouldn't want to short TRX either. I did throw another alert. I'd said previously that there was this daily supply here, and I alerted it just to see if we were going to get, it had that wick through it before, but just to see if it was going to react, and it just consolidated, and then it has this 4-hour just inside it at the top. So again, it's swing failed that zone, but it could reject this zone. You can see it's at least had a reaction here. But again, obviously TRX is one of the strongest alts there is, so I wouldn't necessarily say it's wise to short this, but it was more that I wanted to monitor. Interestingly with TRX, I think it was when it did this big candle, but this happened before Bitcoin dropped on that particular day, not long before. But I think, it was slightly early. So again, like I look at all these majors for the possibility of like confluence for top signals and stuff, top signals and bottom signals. But when they're all hitting resistance, when they're all hitting support, then maybe the market's ready to reverse. So they're kind of in an interesting spot. Obviously, Ripple's now trying to take out that high. So Litecoin isn't the most clear. Ripple has obviously run through the zone that I wanted. BCH is pausing in the zone, and TRX at the moment is pausing in the zone, but very tentatively. So that's the old majors, so just need to see a bit more from those. The new majors, so again, like I talked about this in the last stream and also on the chat on Telegram, that we have some major supply. So we have like Link here has hit 6 months supply, AIDA's hit 2 months supply. But again, obviously these could go there. Firstly, they're weak supply, so that's the challenge. So back to, we have these higher lows. So are we just going to have a higher high here? And this is also so, but having said that, it is worth watching. So if I show you the 6 month chart on Link here, so it's not a strong supply. It could even if it held the supply, it could still go significantly higher, a little bit like Ether. But it's worth watching that level to see if it gets the instant reaction. So I had that level alerted just to watch it, and I was just kind of interested as to what we get. And so far, like obviously we just held 8 hours. It's going to need Bitcoin to fall, obviously, otherwise he's going to follow up. I have alerted also here for the 4 hour, and there's an 8 hour, 4 hour supply and then 8 hour supply up there, just like if we kind of get back to the top of this drop. But obviously that's still assuming we're going to make, we're making some sort of a triangle structure in here. Potentially for a drop, or maybe it'll break out, I don't know, but I would like to see some sort of reaction of this 6 month. Question is, are we going to go significantly higher inside it? So we're also in a monthly, so not only do we have the 6 month, we're also in, I think, a week monthly supply. So going again, just a very small close below this candle, but again could just go significantly higher inside it and could flip it back. Like a lot of these zones are just a bit challenging because they're weak. And the bigger picture on Link, obviously, and this is not dissimilar to Ether, is that we are coming off, obviously we're coming off lows here, but we came off, I think this is deleted them all now, so I could see that the 6 month supply because it's new. Oh yeah, actually, well, I mean, arguably this is also still potentially a 6 month demand. It's just flipped it. But I think we closed slightly above that level, making a yearly demand. So kind of I want to be bullish on this on macro, but when it makes a 6 month supply, it's making me change my bias. But I still need to see a bit more because it wasn't a significant close. But yeah, so anyway, just watching this at the moment, like it hasn't done much, obviously, off that level. It's just falling up. The other challenge we've got on all these majors and a lot of alts in general is they're all leaving these stops underneath now. And I was kind of looking back at the charts thinking, are we going to go and take them out? And it's kind of hard to judge. In some situations, yes, we do. We have a wick up where move up and then we come back and take them out. But then in other situations, we don't. So I guess if we are reversing, we don't have to. And I think most of the examples I see that we do eventually. It's just a question of when. Even here we had some and it did come back down. But I think there are at least 1 or 2 examples where it just doesn't come back, I guess. Here's not the best example because it's not really trend line stops, but here I guess when it's consolidating and then it can just break out. Yeah, so it's not like it's hard to find sort of very similar clean PA to kind of see what's going to happen, but like really with a lot of these I would have liked to have seen this. I've got near hitting now. So yeah, there were a few other the majors haven't quite hit yet. So anyway, the short version on this is that we've got Link in 6 month supply. We've got AIDA in 2 month supply, obviously both at all big zones, so can go higher inside if they want to. I need to look for precision on those. DOGE hit my alert for 5 day. This has monthly supply, so it was already up inside it, but there was a 5 day here. The alert went yesterday, but obviously you can see it hasn't quite hit that level. And BNB is like the only one of these that I'm more in a local bullish because we came off monthly demand at the lows. So I have an alert here for this 12 hour supply just to see, but again, I don't necessarily expect that to reject hard particularly, but it's like, if we're going to we're just trading waves and swings on these, so it's possible, again, with all these stops that has been left below, it's left a whole bunch of stops there. Is it going to be at least, maybe be nice and give a move back down like that before going up again? And you can see we've got a lot of that in the past. Or is it just going to break out? I don't know. We'll see. So yeah, anyway, those are the zones that I'm looking at on those, the first set of new majors. On these other majors, the second set of majors, these, I'm trying to remember. So Atom had a monthly supply, so obviously I had an alert there. So similar to Link and ADA, it's hit it, hasn't rejected as yet. This NEAR was one of the few that didn't have a monthly supply, but again, it's got a 5-day there, so I had alerted the 5-day, and as you can see, actually, I don't know if the alert's hiding behind my picture on this, but the alert just went 4 or 5-day supply there. So again, you can see if we get some sort of a reaction off here. Sol, again, didn't have an alert on because it hadn't quite hit. So I had this alert go twice actually for the monthly supply up here, and it hadn't quite hit. So I was just wondering if Sol was going to push. I already had the alert for the weekly, and it's just consolidated. So it's still kind of in weekly supply. I mean, maybe you can look here, 165 for the possibility of a rejection. Again, those trend line stops below. But Sol, I haven't gotten a more immediate alert on because there's nothing clear to me. And DOT, my alert's significantly higher because the monthly on this is quite a lot higher. So I guess if the ones that have hit already do push deeper in the zones, then what I look for is, where are they going to be at when DOT gets back up here, for example. And in fact, the 2 months, so DOT's got a 2 month that's a little bit lower than my alert. And I've just alerted just slightly higher for this kind of consolidation section in there. It's also got another, that 3 months already been tested up there. So yeah, I guess we'll see. And and the other thing is, I guess on all of these is this the bottom? So it's possible. I need to look at the totals and the market cap charts and ascertain that. But I mean, it's potentially it is the bottom for a bigger move up. We do have draw on price higher, zones that haven't been tested, but that is now going to mean getting through monthly supply to kind of get up to those tests. Now it's possible that we do that because what we had on a lot of alts had, like, I mean, DOT might not be the best example, but a lot of alts from, where are we, 2024, a lot of alts had this kind of monthly supplies like here, and when we did the 2024 run, actually I think it's this run I'm talking about, this is not a good example, but when we did the 2024 run, we did take out like monthly supplies up here, swing failed, and then drop back and close back below. And DOT obviously is not a good example of that, but that's what happened on a lot of things. Obviously we've now dropped quite a significant amount on this. So if I ignore the supply demand thing, and if I just think about ranges, here, DOT's hit this 3-day demand here. We just need to see the reactions on those levels, but it could be time at least for some sort of up move. I just wonder if we need a few more candles to confirm. So most of the majors now at least did create 5-day demand. So you can see that there. Show you the others. So we've got 5-day demand there on DOT. We've got 5-day on Atom in here, and on NEAR. So, and again, it's up to you. Like, if you're really keen to get into these, then you can look for longs on those. I think some will be better than others. Like Sol also has one. So Sol, while it didn't have a new monthly demand, monthly supply, it's already in a large 3-month supply, and it came up quite high inside that. Like I say, just front running the monthly supply in that zone. But this is Sol is one of the stronger ones. So if you want a long 5-day demand, that might be the one to do. But just be conscious of all those stops below. Let me see on these. BNB obviously would be one of the ones to potentially long the 5-day demand, and I might alert that later. I need to think it through. Link, ADA, and DOGE I won't because of the monthly and 2-monthly supplies that they've got there. So if I start to see them not really react and Bitcoin consolidating sideways, then maybe I'll just see what's happening with Bitcoin. Then maybe I'll start to get more bullish on those. But at the moment, while they're under those supplies, I think there's better things to trade. So it doesn't mean they're not going to go up higher, but there are better things to trade at this point in time. What I will do is probably move the short entries up. You know, if we do push up inside, then I will look, you know, similar to what I've done for length, and I will look at what the next lower time frame zones are inside those massive monthly and 6 monthly zones to see if there's anywhere I can add entries. And possible, so yeah, possible short entries. And then similarly, I think on these, so yeah, TRX actually of note made a, I might hide that daily so we can see it, actually made a 2-week demand. I already had an alert down on this 5-day demand inside here, but it did actually make a 2-week demand closer to price, so you can potentially watch that. BCH did make another 5-day demand on sitting on top, but again, just, okay, this is grinding up. But again, all the trend line stops it's leaving below. And, you know, I had been more aggressive on this going, right, I'm longing each bounce. But at some point, you know, I do expect this to come back and take everything out. Whether it gets up to here first, whether it gets even higher first, I don't know. But, you know, now it's coming to the kind of point of, you know, that we've got. We've got this potential trend line resistance coming up. So are we going to crawl up here a little? You know, it has, obviously BCH has slowed the momentum. You can see by these 5 days that it's creating. So momentum is slowed on this, but you know, again, doesn't mean it's not going to take off if it wants to. But I mean, you know, I'd like to kind of try and get into a short on this potentially to take out all these trend line stops. So again, I'm a little more, while it's one of the most bullish ones like TRX, I'm a little more reluctant to look for longs on that. And then Ripple again, like I want to look for longs. I think this didn't make a 5-day, but I think it's got 3 days and 2 days, and yeah, it's got a 3-day in there. So there are certainly long entries on this, but the challenge again being those trend line stops. So I'm just wondering if these are going to take big wicks down, maybe into this zone or maybe back to lower. Yeah. So that's, I guess, you know, my concern with these. And then Litecoin, as I've said many times before, is a complete mess. So I'm not looking really for anything on that at the moment. I'm still getting a bit of a push on Bitcoin and a lot more of a push on Korea now. And like I say, US dollar dominance is approaching this kind of zone. It's a 12-hour there, and there's an 8-hour a little bit lower inside it. So yeah, watch out for that, because that could like at least give us an interim bounce and an interim top on Bitcoin. Maybe that's as far as that Korea is going to get, just over those double highs there. Yeah. So anyway, now alts, because alts are just way more interesting. So I'll go back to the 2 layouts that I've talked about previously. And also just been a real mishmash, like, to be honest. Like, so I've had some great entries and great calls, and I've had some terrible ones in the last few days, or since I did the last stream. You know, some of the ones, you know, and I say terrible in that, you know, like if I'm wrong, if I say something's high risk and I'm wrong, that's fine. But if I'm like, yeah, I think this is going to go up, and then it really just dies, and I've had 2 of those now this week, then I just think, oh my God, what's the world coming to? And I can't argue that necessarily it's me, because this crypto is crazy. And I don't know if there's any signs. I mean, I'm becoming wary of them. I guess once you experience them, you become wary of them. But I don't know if there's any signs that I should have seen on them. But I'll get to those when I get to the next layout. Anyway, but this layout I've had for a while. I think the only change I made, or I added these 2, I think I talked about in the last stream, so HOSICO and TUT. So this layout was supposed to be for things that are, you know, horrifically going up, and that likely might, you know, fall off a cliff at some point, because then it's to try and get, you know, the short entries. And some cases, like, I kind of go, okay, I'll get back, try and get in on the long side as well. And they've given some really nice swings. So, you know, when we have made tops on things like Form, you know, it gave some really nice swings, a couple of longs, a couple of shorts, and then back down into major long entries. That's good. Then I had a 2 aggressive long, and then a front run long, and now we're just hitting another short. So this is a pretty high risk short on Form here, because obviously it's one of the more bullish ones, but that's hitting now. Hype also, obviously it's one of the more bullish ones. It's still coming off major demand here. But, you know, there's possibility that it was going to take out these highs and go into 8-hour supply. So again, worth watching for the possibility of this reversing. Maybe it'll go up to that 4-hour at the top there. Probably show you the full chart, shouldn't I? So hype. Do this more logically. Hype now in 8 hours supply, does have a 4-hour up here, so certainly look for that. I've had that squiggle from a previous stream, I think. But yeah, if we still continue to push, then I think it's still worth looking for the possibility of a short in there. Because if it does work, then you're looking at potentially a decent sized drop. But again, we are also obviously going to need Bitcoin to support all this. You see, does this actually have a weekly? This does have weekly demands that I haven't drawn in. It's got a 2-weekly demand in here. So yeah, actually, I mean, these shorts aren't particularly high probability, so I'll take that one off. Yeah, I mean, you can keep an eye on this, but be conscious it is coming from 2-week demand, so this can still just take off if it wants to. A form, yeah, I'm not sure if I updated all the 2-week zones on this. Yeah, so form didn't close above that. Might close above to make a 3-week demand this week. The only thing with form is, yeah, like this retracement, I just wanted it a bit lower. So I think, again, I was looking for a short just for the possibility that we might get, you know, either it's going to test there now if it's made a new 2-day demand, but if it's going to get a test a bit lower to get the wrong entry in. But yeah, you can just keep an eye on that one. It's not going to be overly, so neither of those are going to be overly high probability if Bitcoin's going to keep going up, because obviously they're the strong ones and Bitcoin will drag them up. SERAPH, I read yesterday in somebody's channel that they that it might have an upbit listing, and then they were bullish on that basis. But then it's probably one of not many things that's quite bearish today. So I'm not sure what happened there. We had this weekly demand, and I had that alerted anyway. I talked about, you know, the potential for a short there, which didn't quite get hit, and then I re-added that in case it gets a wick back up into that, but obviously it didn't get that high and is now just falling again. But I did say with this weekly demand, obviously we've got a channel running here, so it's possible we're going to come lower in the weekly demand, you know, even if this is, whether or not it's ready to roll over, I don't know. We've had 3 pushes to the high, so it might be ready for a bigger drop now, but it's not aggressive as yet. So see what the reaction is down there. I think maybe it's just going to hold this trend line now. I don't know. ZBCN was another one that kind of fell off a cliff, so I had that aggressive short that came in there, and then I was looking at the possibility of a long here. This, I think it was an 8-hour demand there. Yeah, so this was an 8-hour demand for the alert, did wick through it, and then gave the bounce, and then I threw in a short here, possibility from weekly supply. And again, I said in the alert, because of this, you know, the trend line stops, all these wicks through here, this wouldn't necessarily react. And it has started to react, so I guess we'll see. But yeah, that's messy, so it hasn't really given a structure to get back in on a short. It's also left some more stops above there. But yeah, that's something to keep an eye on for the possibility of a short based on the weekly supply. But yeah, just be conscious that it could go for a lot of these stops if it wants to. And then, you know, like that would kind of be my next entry. And if you watched the last stream, you would have seen Port 3 and other things doing some crazy stuff, you know, when they want to. So HOSICO, again, something that's obviously still bullish, but I was looking more aggressively for shorts on in case we were going to get a swing fair of this high. And that, you know, it's still a possibility. It could still go either way. It could still break out. And again, if Bitcoin's still being aggressive, it's unlikely to fall as yet. So I did, you know, I saw that it was going to make an 8-hour supply here yesterday. So I did put in a more aggressive alert. But then obviously Bitcoin broke out and it took it back up. And this was aggressive anyway because of the fact it hadn't actually broken the range. So obviously it went back through that one and up to this higher, I think that's a 12-hour supply there. So I throw in another alert for that. So it's still, as you can see, it's still very early days. So what I'm looking for, you know, is for the downtrend to start to form. But while it's still holding demand here, this is still a high risk short entry. And, you know, but we might still potentially get something like this. So it's worth watching. Even if it does that afterwards, at least it potentially it's give you potential for a short. And like I said, the timing probably isn't great because Bitcoin's still being very bullish. But yeah, you can keep an eye on that. And then also the other the other thing is if it does flip, you know, again, watch for the long side as well. I think we've got another day till the 4-day closes, but you know, if it does flip 4-day demand, then maybe you're going to get a long out of this. You know, like it doesn't have to break down at this point. Touch was another one I've been watching for a while, and again, it's just messy. I have seen enough of these fall off a cliff now to be kind of like consider them. So anyway, I had a 2-day supply, but it wasn't a strong one, and it just closed back up inside it. So I actually might delete that because that's horrible. I think it's made a 5-day demand, so it has made a 5-day demand. So really, like really, if you want to be confident of shorts, you want to wait for this 5-day to break for a close down here, and then to short the retest of it. However, again, just in the interest of potentially trying to get in early and getting more aggressive entries, I have put an alert here. It has made a 12-hour supply. It might also, this is the daily chart, but it might also make a daily supply. It's not, again, it's not pretty, and it's wicky, so just be a little bit careful of that. But I do think it's worth watching there. You know, if it's going to get, you know, having had this wick take out all those wicks, then at least, you know, maybe it'll come down and take out some wicks below. Or maybe it's front run me, who knows. But yeah, that's something to watch if it does come back there. But yeah, just be conscious that it's messy. Useless has obviously gone back to being bullish again. So I can't remember. Yeah, so I think I talked to you again. I talked about this in the last stream. So I said here, you know, if you can't beat them, join them. And I said the last time I did this, you know, it took one last high and then dropped. So that's what's happened. Although it has in this case come back. I think when I did it on Tibia, it actually marked the top entirely when I finally went sod it and put in a long entry. But yeah, so we did get a reaction off that, but it didn't go very far and then came down deeper. But then because of the break, I thought it was worth looking for shorts on this. So I had an aggressive short here on 8-hour supply. So that did give a nice move down into this, I know, 12-hour demand down there, but then pushed back up. There was another 8-hour supply here that hadn't quite been tested. So again, if I re-alerted for that, and again, it did give some sort of a consolidation and reaction, but by then had made some new demands, so pushed higher. So now it's just consolidating through here. So I don't know, maybe this will just be crazy and take off again like bananas. But as I said, you know, I want to watch these for the drops, because when they do die, then you can get significant deaths. So show a few examples of those. Let me look at bananas first. Yeah, so then the final one on this layout is bananas 31, which got very nice long entries on monthly demand at the bottom, and then had this significant drop, which then obviously didn't quite hit. This was where I had the alert, didn't quite hit the weekly demand for where I wanted to re-long this. And then since then, again, like it was worth watching to see if we were going to get a rejection for a lower high in there and potentially take out the stops, but no, it just held there. By then it had made 5-day demand, it's made 3-day demand, which it held, and it's just taken off since then. So it's just one of those crazy shitcoin situations. And if this is on, yeah, this does appear to be on all the perps. But again, when it is ready to give this short, then it should give a really nice short. So I do have an alert for the daily there and the 5-day. We're kind of talking about them both in the first alert. But you know, as and when, you know, if this does decide to fall, it's probably just going to run through everything. And yeah, just to show a few examples of that. For example, and why I like to keep an eye on them, because even if you get stopped out of a couple trying to get in a little bit too early, you know, when you are right, you do get the really, and this has just died. When you are right, you do get the really significant falls. So this was, so you can see it just had multiple weeks of up, and then when it decided it wanted to get to the top, that was it. It's the end, you know, and it had, you know, 5-day and weekly demands through all of this area, but just hasn't. Actually got a short there as well. That's probably hasn't updated on this layout actually. Yeah, it hasn't bounced on any of these for any significant length of time, and as you can see now, it looks like potentially it's going to die forever, right? And maybe it'll make a double bottom here and go back up again. You can actually possibly keep an eye on this for long if you want. But yeah, this is what I'm looking for on those things like bananas and useless, etc. I mean, to be fair, like this didn't have a monthly demand like bananas. But like I say, it did have, you know, we had a weekly demand, we had another weekly demand untested, but it's just not caring. It's just gone straight back through everything. Once it's ready to drop, it drops. On was the same. So there were 3 of them. I can't remember the third now though. So on similar. So obviously, so here I had an alert for the annual demand. We come down, obviously broken the weekly down and come down deeper inside it. But this is a little bit different because this did have a hacking, no, not a hacking, developers selling news of some description. So, but yeah, again, I had short entries up here, which I've subsequently deleted, but it didn't come back and test for me. So that's like why I want to get in early, like when I can, because when these do drop, they do drop hard. Like I said, there is a third one, but I can't for the life of me remember what it is now. So yeah, those are just examples and why I'm kind of keeping an eye on these things for the possible short entries and why I'm looking slightly aggressively on them. Because I think if you do get in those major ones, those are, you know, like at some point, you know, unless I don't know, maybe this has more than layer or on in more way of what it's doing. That's called Bananas 31, so I tend to find that hard to believe, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it has a really solid project. But again, you know, and it does have a monthly demand here. So, I mean, certainly you should look, you know, obviously didn't come back down to test the lower entries I had in here. So I was trying to get in something from multiple times back down here. But then it's just taken off. But once it's made that monthly demand, and that's, you know, that's what's really propels things. Again, for some reason, I've lost my line has gone, disappeared. But yeah, that was the low here. And there was a low, and then we got the retest, and this was formed at exactly the same thing. You know, they both like wicked off a cliff, wicked up hard, but then came back and tested that level and then moved. Yeah, for some reason, again, I've got drawings reappearing on this. I don't know why. Anyway, yeah, so we'll just we'll keep an eye on that. I mean, you can go jump into a long if by all means if you want. I mean, certainly. So yeah, I should just clarify. Certainly, these things aren't necessarily shorts. For me, it's just like if you can get in the short, if you do see it. But you know, I haven't got the patience or the the time to kind of like really monitor what needs to be monitored for long because they could just dump. You know, as you can see on bananas, they could just dump at any time. So you need to be careful. And monitor them if you're looking for the long side, you know, when they're on these massive up moves. You know, hype is certainly worth watching for the possibility of a bigger breakout here. But again, would have been nice if it had come down. So certainly hype if it comes back down into this 3-month zone, then that's when, you know, I'm going to be looking hard for longs on this. So, you know, maybe we get a cliff dive here, you just never know. Or maybe it's just going to take off, you know, there's nothing I can do if that's what happens. But if we get like that wick down that we saw on bananas, that we saw on form, you know, so form was looking strong and then just came down really hard into this monthly. And then my alert went and it went very deep inside and bounced very, very hard, but then came back for the test. And then, you know, now it's got a really solid move off it. So that's, you know, what I'm looking for similarly on a lot of these others. And then the second layout was supposed to be the bullish ones, and as I said in the last stream, they kind of ended up not being, or they're just so slow. They're like making me lose the will to live. So getting the timing on these can be really quite hard. Getting them not to put my drawings back is also quite hard. But yeah, getting the timing can be really quite hard on these. And I said I was going to try and update this layout with new stuff. I put ban on it when I was on the last stream, and I added XO as well. But the other ones I haven't changed as yet. Oh, and SERAPH, but again, I did that when I was on the last stream. Bob's the only new one since the last stream. So what happened here is, you see those words that I have. So I did have AGT here for my sins. So I said I jinxed this. So I was again watching this, and this is my problem with these trend line stops is what can happen. But obviously I kind of like I don't know what that was, whether that was just the bear market, but you know it had just swing fouled the low. It was kind of like okay, there was a zone, there were zones it hasn't tested. It had a 3-day demand in there. I think it had a daily, 2-day in here higher. And then it just consolidated here for ages. And then I was joking in the group that maybe I just jinxed it. So, we had 4 or 5 days of just sideways there. So I don't know, like maybe there's something I'm missing. If you have some pearls of wisdom of something I'm missing of why this suddenly fell off a cliff, then, okay, it's got trend line stops. But normally, again, you would potentially expect a bounce, and then it takes out all the stops, not necessarily just this. And this really did happen very, very quickly. I had very little. The first one, so here had like a 4-hour candle going up, but then this just collapsed. But But I said, yeah, I joked in the group that I jinxed it because I was thinking about things, this had taken so long up here. I was thinking about things that maybe I could put, this is not necessarily in place of AGT, but just on this layout. And I knew I'd forget things, and I'd seen these ones where I was kind of like, okay, these might have some capacity to move. So I kind of put this text in here just so I remembered. And then I was like, it's like AGT knew that I was thinking about getting rid of it, and it went fuck you and just done through everything. Yeah, so anyway, we had that one AGT this week, and then the one I talked about in the last stream that we've already had, so the two which have really kind of screwed me. Well, not screwed me because I actually haven't been in them, but screwed me from the perspective of trying to make analysis and have judgments. BMT was the other one. So obviously BMT has the capacity to do these big drops. It was making this triangle here. But again, at this point, I was kind of really hoping that we had a 4-day demand in here, and then I was hoping it would just drop out of the triangle, hit the 4-day demand, and then run from there. It's still got a long way up that it could do if it wants. But then no, yeah, it just tiny bounce on that 4-day demand, and then run, and then this 3-week demand. It's like, no, and it's not quite taken it out, but it's just basically run all the way to the bottom of this. So it's got a little tad lower it could go, but yeah, I mean, so I guess this is essentially support. And like I say, it does have the capacity to do these big drops if it wants to. But yeah, that was kind of one of the other ones that screwed me earlier in the week. And so let me put Bob back. So yeah, I added Bob just when the alert went yesterday, because this is something, I had the short in here and I hadn't watched it, and then I just kind of noticed it yesterday and was like, oh wow, this really took off. So you can see on this, that it does, it's got trendline stops here. It's also got trendline stops here. So they certainly can bounce on the top of demand, even if they do have trendline stops. But it's just being conscious. I put it in the alert, just be conscious it's got those stops there, just in case it wants to go and take them out. But yeah, so that had kind of a nice bounce off that level, but again, didn't make a higher high and is now. So now this might be a bit more tentative, but I was hoping because it has this bigger. So it has come up to the bottom of those wicks there. But I was hoping because we had a bit of a gap left to fill there that we might get a bit more of a run on this. But yeah, I kind of just want to see, obviously it's got a bit more volatility than it had in here previously, so I need to see a little bit more PA on that. XO is probably the solid one of the week. So again, I talked about this and you saw me add it if you watched the last stream. It had these sort of trend line stops. It was holding 4-day demand, which I think is now a 5-day. So the alert, I initially had the alert for 4-hour breakout, and it did go. So I think if you look at I think it did go off a little bit earlier in the day yesterday, and I said just hold off on it because it's a bit slow. And then it went off again, once it had the bigger breakout. And I think I put the 8-hour. I think I changed it to the 8-hour candle breakout. Then it made a 2-day demand, and it really just took off from there. Unfortunately, I didn't get a chance to re-alert on that because that was while I was asleep. And yeah, so that's a nice move up from there. Possibility it rejects in here, but we just need to see. But again, this is massive scope to move up if it wants to. So keep an eye on this. If it comes back down into this 4-hour there, could be worth a long. And then or higher time frame, obviously that 5-day. And it may not come back and test that 5-day because it has already tested it on the 4-day and it's the same level, and 3-day is the same level. But so it's come up higher. But again, if it does want to drop a little bit lower. But yeah, in the first instance, watch this 4-hour for a re-entry. I might actually change that. Put the alert back up there. And hopefully it won't scream me like AGT or BMT. And I guess this is the problem with these new coins. This has so little history. Like, I don't know if this is just, like a Solana shitcoin that it's just going to go up. It's only been around for not even 2 weeks. So is it just going to go up and then fall off a cliff? And we do have plenty of examples of those where I like to trade them right at the beginning, but like, let's see. I want to think BR, but not what BR has been doing recently, but back from where BR at the start. So ignore that. This is because this is my second layout. It's got some old stuff on it. But like here, for example, 20th of March to the 24th. So this is only 4 days. It's a little bit less than XO, but it's not dissimilar. That it's got such little PA that if it does just want to break down, then it could do that 90% drop. because so many of these altcoins do that. God knows what's going on with that. Um, but so many altcoins will just start up here. They do a fake out, they trap people. Then it's dropped in this case like 80%. So yeah, you need to just be a little bit careful with the new stuff. If it does go up, like bananas, it can give you like major moves, but maybe it needs like at least bananas had that monthly demand, so maybe it just needs a little bit more PA. Um, yeah, anyway, so be wary, but keep an eye on it because if it does work, it could work very well. Same with Bob, really. Again, like I've got an alert here for a short, but it could just run. Oh yeah, this did actually. The only other thing with this is it does have some more history on the MEXC chart for some reason. Like I don't normally chart. I think I didn't realize Bob was the same as Bob BSC on MEXC. It's Bob BSC, so I think I didn't realize this had extra history until I found Bob BSC and realized that actually it's got a bit more history. But I think I was okay with this being the low. I think this does hit something on the BSC chart, but I really need to double check. Or it's challenging again. I was toying with the idea of removing this. So again, I want to be bullish on this because we have this monthly demand, but it's not. It's not a good monthly demand. That dog barking is really annoying. And there's nobody listening, so I don't know if it's really loud on the stream or not. Hopefully not. Maybe I'll just pause for 1 sec and close my window because it doesn't seem to be showing. And obviously, as soon as I'm going to do that, no, is it going to shut up? Okay, let me just close my window quickly. Okay, I'm back. So maybe I've been a little bit quieter. So yeah, this did have this monthly demand, but on the CoinEx chart. But when it's from when the price started open and the exchange open for trading, it's not ideal. But it has held on this bounce, and then obviously gave a big wick up here. So again, I was just in two minds. I kind of thought it was worth looking for higher low longs, and we did have a 2-day demand here, which is what I had alerted previously. But the problem is, we're in the time it's taken to bounce, it's made a 4-day supply. So I'm now toying with just taking this off the list because if this wick had come down into here, I'd be more comfortable with it. But maybe now we're getting that ABC. We've got the A, we've got the B retest, and we're just going to get the C down into here before we get an up move. So yeah, I would say leave that alone for the moment unless we see something different or some flip of that 4-day supply. Ban is another one that this has a 3-month demand, I think, or is it 2 months? No, 2-month demand. So again, I noticed this late. It made a 2-month demand here. It's come down a little bit inside it and then it's pushed off it. It had a monthly previously that it came deeper inside, and it's currently also in a weekly supply. So again, it's slightly challenging structurally. I have set an alert for 2-day, 1 week demand here, just because we've got the 2-month. I'll take that 3-week out because there's just too many lines in there right now. So again, I need to see a little bit more from this. Like if this can just break through this supply and then we get a retest higher, then that's when I would look for an entry on that. So yeah, I added this to the chart, to the layout on the last stream, and it came down and hit this daily demand, but it hasn't come back. Like I wanted it to just a tad lower than that, and it hasn't come back for me. So hopefully it hasn't front run me, but we can just see if we get that test. Else, if it breaks out first, we might have to look for something different. Skate, a bit on the fence about, because again, it's just very, very sideways, and I can still really see this can either go either way. Like I've seen these, kind of consolidate here and just die, or consolidate here and break out. But if the market is going to go bullish, then obviously it's worth watching this. I had another alert. I said to the group to watch this again today. I had another alert for a break of this trend line on the 8-hour, and we've now got that. And it's still kind of underneath this 4-hour. But again, multiple tests on it and that break of the trend line. So I would like to see this push, but I kind of, I need to see, again, a bit more green off it, because I don't want this to just be a sideways forever and then just wait until Bitcoin's ready to die and then die. AIOT's another one, and this is another risky one that could go the way of AGT and BMT. Like it did have like it's different and it's got a weekly demand, but You know, again, would have been nice maybe if it had tested lower on that last drop, but then it had another push higher, but again, not definitive. You know, it's got that 5-day demand that it's made in there, and it made a 12-hour inside it. So I have alerted, you know, this is coming back to that alert now. But again, we'd really like, it would be nice if this had been a bit bigger and a bit more definitive, to like a bit more momentum on that. So again, I was slightly wary of that one, but can keep an eye on that if it hits. APX is something I've just been watching for a decade, and again, this could well go the, it's been taking so long, it could well go the way of AGT and BMT. Again, the difference here is it is off a monthly demand, so and that was why I started watching it, but I think I started watching it like around here, and then it just really, you know, it hasn't given me much. I had a look, and you can see, I guess there's a similarity here with what AIOT's doing. You know, it's that kind of sideways. This is, I think, the APX is one that's been going on a lot longer, but it's that kind of sideways at resistance, but just unable to push past resistance. So I don't know if it's eventually just going to die. It has left stops above here, but you know, and I put an alert for that, but like this is not, so I haven't got a cross there. I can put a black cross there, but yeah, it's the comment is look for a breakout retest. Not, this is not trade this as a short there. But again, you know, so they've made a 4 or 5 day demand here, but it's got a 4 or 5 day supply. I think it's a weekly. Yeah, it's kind of flipping around the weekly. I would like to see this create a 3-week demand today, hopefully, and then we'll see. But yeah, again, something to keep an eye on because of that monthly demand, but really isn't doing much so far, and it makes me nervous when they're taking so long. And SERAPH is another one. Again, it's just taking too long. Oh my god, I can still really hear that dog even with the windows closed. It's going crazy now for some reason. So again, this is another one. It had a monthly demand, and I think, did it quite test it? No, so it hasn't quite tested it. So again, would it be nice if this gives a wick down into the monthly demand, but I also had a trend line alert set. So again, it's trying, but very slow. And these things just need, I guess they need people to see them and show interest in price. And this one, I don't know, again, might go very much in a sideways consolidation. I like that it has the monthly demand. It had a previous monthly demand, which obviously, so I've been kind of looking for longs and bullish on this for a few months. But at some point it needs to actually break out if it's going to break out, and so far it just gets battered down with these giant wicks every time it gets up around this level. So it's difficult. But again, just watch the test of that monthly demand if it comes back to it, and also if we actually get any decent candle build up at this point in time. Just be wary of that one because of the wicks on it. So yeah, anyway, like some of these, like I'm not sure, so or I kind of might get rid of off this because it can maybe just wait till it gets to the next level. Skate, I'll see. If Skate doesn't do anything really decent for in the next day or two, I'll probably remove that. So these are the ones that I was looking at. Maybe I'll see if I can look at those on the other layout just to see where they're going, where they're at. So then as far as, let me just copy and paste that in here so I can look at it in a bit. So as far as the alerts that have gone today, so I added a new section in the watch list for what went since yesterday. And again, we've had a real mix. So obviously we had things like AGT, which just died a death. We've had Hyper being crazy and STO being crazy. But other than that, I think most of them are actually responding as they should or as you'd expect. And let's see where Bitcoin is. So Bitcoin's still pushing. We're up in the 113 area now. And Ether's still, okay, Ether's gone up higher, but hasn't actually taken out, has taken out the high. Has taken out the high of today. Let's see with all my drawings on the charts. So we're up here now at the high. I'm gonna go and murder that dog. I love dogs, but God, it drives me crazy when they bark, and then I get really angry with the neighbours. But I'm gonna go and hunt that dog down when I get off this stream and find out whose it is. Okay, so Bitcoin's still really pushing and likely to head for that 115 level. Okay, so yeah, the alerts that we've had over the last short period. So Form and HOSICO and Hyper I've already looked at on the other layouts for you. Then we had Hydol, which was this afternoon. So again, that's just another really big move up, obviously, because it hates me just front run my long alert from down the bottom there. I'm up in a 3-day supply. This is kind of an interesting. The problem I have with some of these charts now is that I haven't updated them for a while, so I sort of said to the group, just be conscious that some of these alerts are quite old, so we need to, like, each time they come, they need to kind of be reanalyzed, and I haven't really done that today. But again, what we see on most of the alts is that they made like 5 days, so this made a 5-day demand, new 5-day demand yesterday, and it's propelled off it. So those are the ones that are going to go. It had a 4-day underneath, which was holding. And now, yeah, so we're back up, in this potential rejection area. It's very new. Like, obviously, this can still be an impulse. This could still just run straight through if it wants to. But yeah, that's something you can keep an eye on. So those already talked about. Stowe, I'm just going to run through these. So Stowe, I had an alert here for, I think it was a 3-day, 5-day supply in there, and it's come up higher into the weekly. So again, just these, and I'm a little bit worried that these are just exit pumps. And for the moment, until I see otherwise, I still stick with my previous stream comments that if anything that's pumped like this in a day, that you should be looking for short entries, because potentially they're going to have decent short entries. I'm not sure when that alert went. Might have gone this morning, actually. Yeah, so I think they're going to give you really nice shorts from the big pumps. So I think they're worth watching for those short entries. And the longs are hard, like, I mean, so look at this. This is obviously an alert I had set back in, the 20th of June, so like 20 days ago. And they're just taking their time moving, and it's come back. It has made a higher low there. So, but which of these, if I actually sort the watch list, so scroll down, there's about 700 on this watch list, but it's only, you can see here, like maybe there's top 15 or 20, maybe 30 that are kind of over 10%. Then we've got the Jesus load that have just kind of slightly green today. Lots and lots and lots and lots that are slightly green today. And then a whole bunch that are slightly red, and then a few at the bottom, so there's definitely more on the green side, but it's not like there's loads with massive, quadruple figure. There's only one on the list with 300%. Then there's 56%. Then there's the TGT actually short on yesterday, so I'll show you that in a minute. But there's not actually that many with massive moves today. So I don't know if it's coming. People are going to think all season's coming because Bitcoin's run and then also run afterwards. So maybe we're going to get that run. And I didn't look at others, did I? So that's kind of, and I've said that before as well with others. I've got a bit of frozen going on here for some reason. Okay. Yeah, anyway, so I'm still kind of inclined to look for shorting things back down when particularly if they do these very, very big runs without support, because again, the risk to reward is decent. You can get in and they'll give you nice swings on the lower time frame. So, even if you only short this down to this 2-hour down here, you will get nice swings off these. So I think it's worth keeping an eye on them. So that's Stowe, AVL again. So this was a slightly more challenging one structurally. So we're still very much in a downtrend on the 5-day. So this is an alert for 5-day supply. It's a weak 5-day supply, but it hasn't closed below that low. So, possibly we're going to reverse. So when I looked at all of these, I was still thinking possibly we're going to reverse. But for the most part, obviously, there's no proof of that as yet. We need to see any new demands like be tested and hold. So 5-day supply there. I did have a long entry for the daily demand here, after it had a decent move up there. But again, conscious of the trend line stops, so it came back through. And again, that's the risk with the trend line stops, is that it gave a little bounce, actually gave a decent kind of bounce up to here, to be honest, on this, but then came back down and went for those stops. So again, made 5-day supply, so we just need to see what this is going to give. Is it going to make a daily demand in there today and then potentially build up? Or is this 5-day going to reject for a new low? Gore was an aggressive, I just put those to look at. That was an aggressive short entry, and again, like, it's some risk because of the fact we hasn't broken below this low, but I always like to have some more aggressive ones in. So this had a daily supply, and it's come off. So I think it had already come off the 4-day supply when I looked at it. I believe I looked at it yesterday. it's already come off 4-day, and it's a giant 4-day and a giant 2-day, but it looked like it was going to make this new daily. So I was like, okay, we'll look at that and see if that's going to give just an immediate drop off there. If it doesn't work, and if it holds here and wants to go up, then I'll just see a lot later what it's going to look like. I haven't even drawn, a lot of the lower time frames higher on this. Damn, I should have had new drawings globally. 12-hour. I don't know why I haven't. Yeah, so this obviously I've just done down to the 12-hour on this because that's where I've sort of got the cross down there. But in fact, like if this is an 8-hour, I swear I did this. I feel like I've lost drawings. I might actually refresh this before I continue in case I'm just. I feel like I looked at this before and drew that, even when I was putting the alert in yesterday. I'm just going to refresh this page quickly. This is something's happening on TradingView recently. Like it should correct itself and update all the drawings when it reloads. Sorry, no, when you open the page, even if you don't reload the page. But I've kind of noticed recently it hasn't done that. I then start adding the drawings again, and then I find out I've got all the drawings in there twice because I've just drawn them over the top of previous drawings. But in this case, that hasn't happened, so I'm not sure what's going on with this. Or maybe I'm going crazy and I hadn't done the updates. That dog is still driving me crazy. Yeah, anyway, so there's a bit of chop through here. So if it doesn't reject here, then it's likely to go back to significantly higher. So just, again, keep an eye on that, but don't stay in it if it does look like it wants to go higher. I'd wait for something a bit cleaner, because something like this, you really want to just see the drop quickly off that level. And if it consolidates through here, then it's at least likely to wick higher. It may not even take out the daily, but it's likely to wick higher in the zone. So that's that. Hyper is obviously the one that's gone utterly crazy. So I had a small alert going on this last night, and I just kind of left and I went to bed. It also made, I guess it made a 5-day demand in there. 4-day actually hasn't even confirmed it. So it hasn't confirmed that entry, and it literally's just taken off from there, and it kind of got that alert went, and then I kind of had an alert here for this previous high tentative, and then for this all-time high. And I just said to the group, obviously just be patient and keep watching this and see. But obviously it's going to give a nice short when it is ready to give a short, unless it's got some news that again means it should break out significantly. But even this, this if you get a short down to here, great. But it might also give a good long entry there. I might actually put an alert there just to keep an eye on, because if it does get some volatility going down, then it might get a decent bounce off that zone. So yeah, we'll just see if that gets a retest. Bonk I talked about a lot on the last stream because it was one of the examples I gave of that, whether we're going to get a higher low or whether the macro supply is going to play out. So this had a 3-month supply, which hit on these alerts in May, but obviously it's now made a higher low and it's coming back higher. So structurally, we want to stay down based on the 3-month supply, but we've made a higher low, so we could get, another wave up to make a kind of bear flag before we get that down. And then obviously, and then the bullish scenario was that we had these wicks, it's swing failed the low of the range now, so maybe it's just that's it, and it's going to go back up again. So that's the kind of bull scenario, the bear scenario, like I've just drawn. So given it's a 3-month supply, I was then still looking for the possibility of a lower high in here. So I had a weekly supply, and it's it came up quite high inside it, and then it made an 8-hour and a 4-hour in here. So again, I re-alerted that in case it was going to get the lower high. Again, even on the lower time frame, even if all it gives off here is a lower high and a rejection down into there, down into here, which is currently where my next alert is, and then it does that final move, similar, similar to over here, that we get. Maybe it's doing that before. So again, I had that alert in there, it's obviously taking its sweet time rejecting, and while Bitcoin's going up, isn't likely to. So then maybe this will come up to that next level. So I should probably move that alert up while I'm here as well. I really want to murder that dog. 1 week supply, save. And Vic, similar scenario to everything else I've talked about. You know, something that had a massive pump yesterday, you can see what happened last time. I had a massive pump into this level, worth looking for shorts. This level now is also 6 months supply, so I went aggressive on this. And I said in the group it was aggressive, but there was a, you know, because I only just saw it yesterday. I had, you know, messed around in here. Well, luckily, I only saw it yesterday because it's obviously messed around and whipped quite a long time, but it had this 30-minute supply. It's whipped quite high inside it. But you know, has now sort of started to reject. It's got this 4-hour demand. So again, this is still quite early. And again, if Bitcoin is still holding and if this wants to run, you know, maybe this is the problem that maybe we're going to get some of the runs through to the 6-month supply, but it's got, this is actually a strong 6-month supply, but it's got an untested monthly above. So again, this is what I talked to. So here's an example of this is what I was talking about earlier, is that back here, when we had this run, still don't feel like, I think this is not the timing, but maybe, I don't know, it wasn't as long ago as 2022, but this is the same example of what a lot of things looked like, I think, at the end of last year on the, maybe it's just that this coin didn't, but is that we had monthly supply, we've got monthly supply here, you know, obviously it rejected, consolidated, went up, it whipped through all the way to the top of the monthly supply before that bigger drop. You know, this then closed as a swing failure with that supply, and then when you get, this is why I've got the ether entry shorts where I have, is that if it closes a swing failure of this supply, then it can just reject that same level of that supply, and in this case it's got supply in exactly the same place before that bigger drop. But anyway, yeah, so the risk we've got here is that this wants to run through to the higher levels. You know, we've got, again, from an Elliott wave perspective, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You know, maybe we're going to get 1, 2, 3 up for the next move down. But while we have 6 months supply, I've still got to be short bias. So let's just see what happens up here. I mean, I know some of them, when you get these kind of, again, aggressive moves up, you know, is this going to get continuation, or is this just going to come tumbling straight back down like previously? And it will depend a lot on what the rest of the market is doing. I've got a line in there for, again, that was if we made a daily demand. So obviously this, then if this makes a daily demand, if it closes over that blue line, then it's not a viable trade anymore. But again, that's something that's worth keeping an eye on because it's got big scope to fall if it wants to. Theta was another one. So again, an aggressive short entry, but in a large zone, so big monthly supply there. And again, I need to go in back and see if we're gonna you know, so again, features are one of the challenging, another challenging structure is that, you know, we're you know, back in this support zone. It's made a monthly supply immediately above it, so you know that is possible. But coming off support, the situation uncertain, you know, and it's like swing failed that low. So it's not the strongest monthly supply, but it is a monthly supply. It's got a 2-month untested above and a 3-month. So, you know, is this possible this runs through the month in the favor of one of these levels up here? Possibly. So, you know, and I can look back at prior history and see similar examples of either, you know, so like here, you know, then it just sort of drifted down. So maybe, you know, we're in similar here. We just test and it just drifts down. But then obviously at some point it has to kind of, you know, make a bottom, make a double bottom and just run straight through everything. Or, you know, are we at that point? Perhaps. But I don't want to say we're at that point while we're at monthly supply. I at least want to see that monthly supply react. I don't want to look like this. I want to see that's some sort of a reaction here. You know, if it runs straight through it, then we'll buy the retest. But I want to see potentially some sort of reaction here, even if it doesn't make a lower low. But even if we just come back through here, like I should think that, you know, normally the level, and particularly in the case like this, where the level is in conjunction with like a 5-day and a 3-day here as well, then you should get some sort of a reaction. This is in fact still holding monthly demand, but yeah, so you can keep an eye on that. You know, it's a more aggressive one given the significant drop that we've had already, and even the more recent significant drop. You know, maybe you don't want to short this until it at least gets, you know, back up into the 61 fib area of this. I learned these, you know, just to watch, but so this isn't necessarily highest probability, but I just like to see the reactions on some of them. Remind me to look at them. Blum was an aggressive long entry on 4-hour demand here. You know, it'd come off. It's obviously very much in a downtrend on daily supply, so. But it gave a little bounce off that 4-hour, but didn't go on a 4-hour inside of 2 days, so it didn't go very far. But again, this could probably give some nice trades in either direction once I've got a few more candles. If it closes another daily supply And, would have been a nice short up there for sure. But yeah, I need to say a little bit more on this. But the 4 hour made it worth watching. It's now made a 4 hour supply there. But again, still on the possibility of a higher low, so this may not be a right time yet. There's also an 8 hour in there. This is actually something you could potentially look for a short on that 8 hour supply if it retests there. Just given it's been a bit weaker today. But from a bigger picture and what I alert perspective, I'd rather see this, if this is going to break down, I'd rather see it break down here and then short a retest for a more higher probability trade. This is just something, you can watch. Tag was just a breakout, so I had this as an alert for a short yesterday, so it's something that's just, again, did give a reaction. So this was just on the basis that at that point it had swing fails of the high. So it was worth looking for a short on the retest. I think that was a 12-hour supply, maybe even a daily in there. No, it was a 12-hour supply in there, so it was worth watching, but obviously it just still hold this demand. So again, my hope here was that we would get a rejection that would take it back down into here for long, but no such luck. It's just taken off from there. So, but on this, like, I wanted to again keep an eye on what Bitcoin's doing and how this closes. If this closes, that daily demand there like that, then I think this is decent. It's worth looking for a short. Sorry, a long on the retest of the level that I look for short on. Because maybe it could be one of the ones that takes off. If that fails, then 100% look for short entries. It sounds like I'm being very indecisive, but when there's very little history, it is hard. Bow was another like an aggressive short entry. Don't love this. This did give a reaction yesterday. I don't love this. Again, the higher low, well, basically just the higher low. I mean, I don't know if there's any support over here from historically. But again, if this is going to hold, 5-day demand, if it's going to make a higher low, if it comes back here and tests, then maybe this could get a bigger move up. But the market's going to have to be ready for that. Let's see how long I've been going. 1 hour 45 on this stream so far. So yeah, it's a little bit of a risky one there. So maybe leave that one alone. Bob, we already talked about. ZBCN, we already talked about. SHM. So this was an aggressive long. And again, lacking history. So we had a weekly supply, but already rejected that, came down, then went hit again and came back down. Actually doesn't look like it's quite hit my long level there anyway. So yeah, the alert went, but it hadn't quite hit it. But again, just very early days on this. Like I had, previously, I've tried to have longs for the higher low, and it's come back all the way back down to the base. Obviously, it didn't give me, I don't know what zones I had in here previously, but just gave bounces for lower highs. So then I flipped to the short side. So again, decent entry for a short, but now it's come back through. So when you get these very early days coins, like you're trading a lot of supply and demand that are weak, so it's quite hard to. Judge. I've got very few viewers today. Making me very nervous about the connection, but maybe just nobody's online today. But normally at least get some views, even if people just stay 3 seconds and leave. Normally I'd get more views than this. So I hope YouTube hasn't like blacklisted me. But anyway, I'm getting super hot now with the window closed as well. And as soon as I think the dog stopped barking, it starts again. But yeah, anyway, that's SHM. Just you can keep an eye on that, but that's not really high probability in either direction. That's just messing around. XO and useless we talked about. Iris Virtual. Again, another one possibly is reversing. So I had an alert for a weekly supply in here. It's come up into the daily inside. I said there was a daily inside. It has come up into the daily. So again, just needs a bit more time. So I tend to very much like these kinds of trades when the market's just more sideways. So when the market gets bullish, obviously this is higher risk. But when the market's sideways or down, obviously, then the MEXC trades, I think this is just MEXC, let me just check. Yeah, MEXC and KSEX. Then the MEXC trades tend to be quite high probability. You're just, you're really just looking for this. So then this is at this point it's not a bigger consolidation, but that's what you're kind of hoping for on no matter which time frame you're on. So we had a short entry here of this 3-day supply retest up there, and now this is just another retest. So are we just going to get another lower high for a lower low? Hopefully, unless the whole market reverses. Sellers another one that's not dissimilar to Theta, and we've got Russell hitting the next zone. just look at something quickly. Yeah, this is fine. Sello's just another one, it's got a swing fail of the low, so it's, maybe it's not going to be, it's not going to reject here. There's, I don't know what the alert was, like 5-day supply plus monthly supply in there. So there's got a new monthly supply. So again, we're hoping for that. It's a weak monthly supply. You can see it's only wicked below the low. So these just need more time. So either we're going to get a rejection here and it's just going to fall, which is obviously what I'm hoping for when I set the alert. With that 3-week one. Or, it's the swing fail is going to play out. We're going to get a move up, hopefully not too fast, but it's crypto, so you never know. Going to get a move up that's then going to flip that monthly supply to a demand by the end of this month, and then maybe we'll get all season. Or at least a move up on these anyway. So something on this, it's now made a 6-month supply here. It's got a 6-month supply up there. It's got a 2-month also at this level that got tested already for the new low, so that 2 months played out. But yeah, so we just need to see what this reaction, what it gives. It's so, in an ideal world, you really want to get these shorts on this retest here when this is broken down properly and it gives a reaction. That would be more preferable. So I think the ones that we've seen in here so far, and I haven't got loads of them set yet, but like Cello, Theta, and Bal, the older coins. I think they haven't really. They're not as strong on the bear structure as I would like them to be, particularly given, so this is bearish and that it's broken below that orange level, but particularly given if it's starting to try to double bottom like this, then, maybe we're going to get a move up. I still don't think that this chart really supports this, but we'll see. So H bars, and again, this one I'm not overly surprised about. Obviously, I was looking for long entries, on this bounce. And it bounced all the way up to 2-day supply and came all the way back down, and it's just made a higher low. So that was a bit too aggressive, but it wasn't a monthly. So I think I had the alert on weekly supply here, so it's still in it arguably. And I think when I recharted and saw that alert, then I can see we are in a monthly supply, but it's H bar. So, again, this probably wasn't the highest probability one to be an aggressive short. So similar to what I saw on Bonk, for example, you don't really want to be shorting, you want to short more when it gets back up into a 61 fib area or higher. And this is also one that, again, it might just have double bottomed here and maybe is going to do a continuation and or take out that high. So this probably wasn't the highest probability. I have moved the alert up to there to see, because obviously this doesn't look like it's reacting at this point in time. But yeah, I can keep an eye on that in the next zone, but no, that isn't overly high probability. The only in its favor is that monthly, but it's not the cleanest, nicest monthly. SHX, so I had shorts on this from this 5-day supply or short alert. But again, I did comment in the group, just being wary that, well, I hadn't confirmed any of those flip levels yet. So just be wary on this, because it also, when I recharted it, having hit that 5-day supply, it's made a 3-month demand. And also a 6-month by the looks of it, but it doesn't look like it has actually tested. It had that 6-month from before, but it's made a new 3-month demand. It's not a good one, again, it's very, very tight, but still, this is something generally I would be more bullish on. But I already previously had the alert in, so I just said be careful on this if anybody was on that short. That, so I would like to see what this does a bit more. Perfect world, it's going to drop down into this weekly or the monthly. There's 2 levels there. For a long entry, but doesn't have to. But yeah, could just consolidate here for more of an up move. So it's not, it wasn't the highest probability short now, given the new 3-month demands in there. And then finally, Cloud, which I wanted to have hope for. So Cloud's just hit a monthly demand. So this, definitely keep this on your radar. I don't know if it's going to do anything, and obviously it's not showing any sign as yet of doing anything. It's a monthly demand, but it's a monthly demand on nothing, so it doesn't have to do something here. I initially had the alert for the weekly, but just to retest it, already tested it, and now there's monthly. But so far, yeah, very, very little bounce. But that should definitely be on your radar, because it is a monthly. But you want to wait for a daily change of structure, at least 8 or 12-hour change of structure before jumping into longs on it. But keep that on your radar. So anything there, that's kind of everything from the last few days. I don't even know. I haven't really had a chance to look back at, a lot of the ones I talked about in the last stream, but maybe just flick through them quickly. Rex was looking for a short, and it's taking its sweet time about it, but Rex is one of the ones you should keep on your short radar. It's still consolidation and still, but it's coming off 6 month, 2 month supply. Obviously, it can go higher inside, but if you can get structure that gives you a breakdown here, that's a decent thing to look at. Port 3 we just talked about because it cliff dived. Seems to be holding that level actually, but wouldn't suggest you buy that. Dupe, initially I had this alert set for longs because I wanted to go for this trend line. But then when this went off, I just said I wanted to monitor this because it had made a new 2 week supply. So you can see it's kind of slowly coming off that. Maybe it'll still go there for those trend line stops, but I mean, I was a bit more nervous than when originally I set these long entries. OIK, one that came off monthly demand, so that's interesting. But again, messy and just back up in supply now, but it's something you can watch. But yeah, horrible structure. And again, it was just, it's actually a little bit like that other one I showed earlier. I can't remember which one now. They all look the same, like a Blum. No, it's not quite as bad as Blum, but could be, could end up that way. But yeah, this is not looking overly promising right now. Mavia was obviously one of the best, but then didn't actually hit the level. And I think one of my group was annoyed because they had a limit order there in it. So I reset the alert on that, but did actually get a decent reaction. Now got 2 month supply. But again, that same challenge, we've got these trend line stops, we've got a high and low here. But I guess what I was hoping, what I hope on this is that maybe we're going to move up into the 2 month supply, then drop back in here, maybe not take out that low, but drop back into that zone for that long entry before going back for the stops. That would be perfect world stuff. MYX, oh, this is interesting. So MYX was just a bit messy and all over the place. I talked about on the last stream, so I won't talk about it now, but it did hold quite nicely off that 2 week, then it flipped a 2 week demand there and held quite nicely. So now, like that, this has a new daily demand. So this actually might run. Keep an eye on that. Like, be careful around here because obviously I had a massive sell-off at this level before, but at the moment I've still got that alert for the same potential sell-off here. But yeah, keep an eye on that. This was a short, so again, that's nice. That's what we're looking for, those some monthly levels to hit and then get rejected. And I put a retest entry. It's consolidated a bit too long now for this 2 hour. I don't really love how long this is consolidated for, but yeah, again, you can watch if it gets a test back up into here for a follow-up short, as SERAPH already talked about. So that's just a horrible chart. AIC, again, this was why my alert went, but it front ran the level, so I reset the alert, but obviously it's bounced in advance. House, weekly demand, again, little bounce, could go through all those trend line stops. Again, worth an eye on this because if it does continue to potentially reverse here, having now hit this weekly zone. So they had an alert initially for 5-day demand, and then it's come deeper down inside the weekly there, which is to hit the weekly. But yeah, that's worth an eye. Right, look at that. Launch coin, let's look at that. Okay. So this is pretty much what I expected on this. So that I had, I thought this was going to come down deeper in the 3-day demand, but then also because it had made a daily supply and a weekly supply, it's kind of like it's worth watching in case it collapses off the trend line. But obviously now has decided not to and is pushing up, which is fairly unsurprising with what the rest of the market's doing. That could be a decent chart, but I think if there's going to be higher time frame, I feel like this is probably too early to have a massive upward breakout. But I could be wrong. Yeah, anyway, so I've been going for quite a while now, so I might sign off since nobody's watching and talking to me today. And hopefully some people will watch it on video later. And finally, yeah, Ava AI, how you pronounce this? Big rogue wick there. So it's back up in monthly supply. So I was looking for that short, like on monthly supply or 5-day, 4-day, 5-day inside monthly. This might come up now to that 5-day. Obviously, is now made 5-day demand as well. So yeah, so I guess you've got all those challenges with structure now that major supplies above, but higher lows, and like ignore that wick, but higher lows and things like that. So again, hard to know if these are just going to run up. But I need to see a little bit more in structures. At least we need to see the first supplies breaking and or the tests here holding on these. Is there anything else I really want to look at here? L3. So I'm looking at what these. There's the few. We had a few that we shorted. We had shorts on earlier this week, or the start of last week. I just wanted to see if they'd held demand. So you can see with L3 it has. Carve is still approaching, and Swarms I think was the other one. So again, yeah, has held off that demand. So kind of interesting, like maybe these are going to get a little bit more of a run. We shall see. GPS I think was another potential, and it was a long side. It was the short before, and then hit for the long. UX link. Yeah, so yeah, I'd rather be trading structures like this. They're a little bit cleaner. When the monthly supply is further away, I'm not sure if this was already tested or not, but when we're hitting cleaner new zones, obviously it's in a new demand down there. It's a new possibility of a reversal. It's a new supply. So again, trading in both directions, but like trade the cleaner stuff is probably the takeaway. You can see I was kind of liking the look of the other day, but it's still very early days. Waves was one that wicked into supply for another drop, and I think I put the monthly demand back in so I could see, but the whole thing's brown now because you're looking at a monthly demand and a monthly supply. And by the looks of it, it's a 6-month supply in this case as well. Yeah, so I guess I need to see a little bit of follow-up of these, and things like I just talked about with Link, like what it's going to do. Okay, so we've got another breakout now on Ether, and then BTC is now at that 113 fib and just about coming into my box of fun. As okay, so we're still actually hasn't gone much further. I thought it felt like it would have gone a lot further. Maybe it was wicking down when I looked. Actually hasn't gone much further than this morning as yet, but I'll see if this can take out the high anyway. But yeah, more interestingly, I don't care about Ether so much, but more interestingly, like we've got that move on Bitcoin going into, hold on there, US dollar dumping into that level. We've got a breakout on CME, a breakout on the US dollar pair, and Korea still has a bit more space. So yeah, I'd like to see Korea in a couple more percent. Let me just look at that more specifically. So at least with only 1% to go on that. But yeah, again, there's that 115 level. Just keep an eye on that 115 level and be conscious if you're in longs when it gets there. Anyway, fun times. Yeah, and that's the other thing I was going to look at others. So let me just quickly look at others and those charts before I finish up. So total, obviously now is pushing up. Finally, total has broken out of this local consolidation, but not. So again, total hasn't broken all-time high either. So again, this is just reflecting the relative weakness of alts compared to Bitcoin. That's a high time frame. Line in the right place. I already have a line there. So yeah, relative weakness of alts compared to Bitcoin. Obviously, all these charts, the total market cap charts, haven't broken out, and then obviously the dollar is potentially driving the BTC dollar chart as opposed to the other, the euro, the Korea, etc. pairs. Total 2, a little bit of a break here now. So again, total 2. So the only thing with Ether as well, so the other thing to watch is if we do start to get a run on Ether, is I would like to see this total 2 up in that monthly supply. It's left a bunch of equal highs here. We do have a big CME gap, I think. at that kind of level on the ether chart, the equivalent level on the ether chart. But yeah, so that would be potentially where I would look for a rejection on ether if we do start to run, or I'd like to see the confluence of total up here, total 2. Total 3 is just approaching that consolidation again. So this would be more, this is more heavily on the majors than anything else. Others then is more heavily just on alts in general and total excluding the top 100. So again, there's nothing really new on this. Like, we're still under this trend line. You know, we had the balance there that we wanted. It's exactly the same. Oh gosh, how's it 7 o'clock already? It's exactly the same as I said previously, that we were looking for the higher low, or if we got a higher low here, are we going to get a move up to this box, or are we going to get a rejection, like for making that triangle or keeping that pattern going? So that's really what you're looking for there, and there's no clean supply here. So other than the trend lines, you know, maybe this will keep running. Total DeFi, I think, is basically the same. Well, actually, this is a little bit stronger. So the others one is still weaker, relatively structurally weaker. Total DeFi I always said was stronger, like the DeFi dominance was, it had strength compared to everything else, or compared to the others charts anyway. And again, like if this one, this does look like it's potentially going to break, but maybe we'll get some DeFi move up to here, same as others. Total E100 is the weaker end. But again, like it can pick up. Maybe this is maybe that's, you know, because it also do run later, so maybe that this structure is going to pick up. My concern with this one was that this hit, and like so many of the alts, this hit 3 month supply at the high. You know, it's in 3 month demand, but it's also in 3 month supply. So it's just that kind of indecisive. You know, are we again, are we doing this higher low, higher high structure? You know, is this going to be an alt season where we get a move all the way up to there? Like I've said a number of times, I wanted this head and shoulders here, but this was a much smaller shoulder than I wanted. I was saying it more on the others chart, which is more thinner. Let me just take this off. I should have deleted that before. But yeah, I kind of always thought this would be some sort of a head and shoulders, and I think more to the point that I feel like this is the higher probability trade, but I would have liked a little bit of a bigger shoulder than we got here. Could have been enough, could still be enough, but I kind of wanted a bit more bigger shoulder. But anyway, yeah, there's a little bit of space on alts at least, or at least a little or a lot. You know, a little if we are going for the lower high. So we've got a bit of space up here if we end up with a lower high, or a lot if we say, well, this supply has already been tested. And as we're already seeing on total DeFi, you know, the tests, multiple tests on this zone, we're running up inside it. And total E100, excluding the top 100. Yeah, again, I mean, it's difficult because potential higher low, but it's got scope to go a lot higher if it wants to. But I need to see a bit more strength coming in. I need to see some of the supply broken, and I don't like the alts being under these new, or at least the ones which are under. So I talked a lot about this in the last stream, that I think we can get runs on alts. You know, somebody was saying, I asked the question whether we would get, you know, the 50, 100 times we used to. I don't know about the 50, 100 times, but I think it's going to be very selective was my response. Like, I think we're still going to get a lot of 2 or 5 times on a lot of things, but I think a lot of things, and I was looking at WaxP as an example, you know, a lot of things we're going to be getting lower highs, and it's just like diminishing returns, just lower highs on all the old stuff. So I think the new stuff, that's why I aggressively look at the new stuff. So anyway, we'll see what happens on this. Totally 100 again. So these triangles are difficult because, yeah, they can just break. These sort of consolidations, you know, can see these go either way. You know, you end up with a massive move up straight through it, or it's very slow and then eventually dies, you know, having kind of major sideways consolidation. It's still very early in the game, but we do have new 5-day demands, and that's good. So yeah, at least pick some alts on 5-day demands and see. So despite BTC's breakout, weirdly, it's still, our dominance is dying off. And is that because everything's running into others? Yes, possibly. But I still would have expected, like, I don't know if I trust this indicator, quite frankly. I still feel like I should see this going up. I suppose this was just hitting the monthly demand earlier. Did I look at much lower time frame or something? Yeah, so, and again, yeah, that's the difficult, because it's calculated. So when you look at the 12-hour, it's very close to hitting the monthly demand. If you look at the monthly, it's nowhere near hitting the monthly demand. And if you look even at the daily, it's significantly higher. So it's only if you look intraday that you'll see that it's actually close to that zone. So that makes it difficult in itself. But yeah, again, while this is still above monthly demand, I want to be bullish on it. So I'd like to see, that happen. Ether obviously has improved. And so the only thing with Ether dominance is in the Ether BTC pair hadn't made 2-week demand, but I kind of noticed actually yesterday that this had flipped 2-week demand here. So again, we're getting that propulsion off that. It's still got 8 hours supply here, so it could still reject. But I mean, I always wanted it up in that zone, so it wouldn't surprise me if it goes a little bit higher up here, particularly having taken out this low of the range, take out the top of the range into that zone. So again, it's another confluent thing that I would look for if I was looking to short Ether. Wait for that. Others dominant, again, I wanted lower. It's making a nice kind of bottoming pattern here. But I was just thinking about it earlier. I'm just not 100% sure whether I should trust this. It's not, I mean, it can be a nice, and again, I was looking back at the chart, there are, most of the time when we have bottoms, we have wicks, not really kind of little curving upward bottoms. Mostly it's a blow off bottom. I suppose here we had a curving kind of bottom, but then it ended up not being an ultimate bottom. So like I'd prefer to have a blow off bottom wick down here, I think, and some volatility rather than this kind of sideways mess. So I don't know if it's just going to reject here. Again, we're just in a little local range. Is it going to reject here and come back down, or are we going to break out the range? I guess we need to see. Total DeFi is a bit better. Obviously, it's broken higher, but it is also in monthly supply. So again, I can't be overly bullish on that. And total E100, while I like the fact it's in this 2-weekly demand, I can't scroll all the way over now. Again, it's still relatively weak compared to everything else. Oh, hi, Aussie man. You're very late to the party. Like, I'm literally just about to finish. I've been streaming for over 2 hours. He said, Ether forming monthly demand. I will answer your questions while we're here. No, like, forming. It depends what you define as forming. I don't know. We're only on day 10, so I think you're very early to the game if you think Ether's forming monthly demand. Okay, yes, I mean, well, it's above the monthly open. So I guess you've got that. Monthly open. That's not the monthly. Sorry, that's the monthly level. It's not the monthly open. The monthly open is obviously the bottom of the green candle that we're currently on. If it closes up here and we make a monthly demand, then yeah, I'm with you. But day 10, no, it's too early. Because it can still very easy. At this point, I'm kind of actually thinking that maybe we'll take out the high of June and then fall, but I obviously need to see that happen up in these next levels. I don't know. I still can't be bullish on Ether. You didn't get notifications. Why didn't you get notifications? Do you normally get notifications? I kind of wonder why nobody was watching. Like, because normally I get on accounts. Normally only you and 1 or 2 other people at best who actually talk to me. But normally I get more views, and I'm quite surprised. Even on my vertical stream, I've got no views, or I've only got like 3. But normally, I'm sure I get like I don't get many normally on the big one. I get normally people watching the video later. But I'm quite surprised I've got no views on the. But yeah, I set it up in advance, and I said I'm starting at 5, and I started at 5, so I don't understand why you wouldn't get a notification. I'll have a look at my own, because I normally get notified as well in my emails. Yeah, that's weird. I don't know why. Yeah, I normally get notifications in my email, so maybe something went wrong, or maybe there's some problem on YouTube. I don't know. Anyway, yeah, so maybe it will create monthly demand, but it's a long way off. Yeah, I mean, maybe it's just on an early bounce off that level. It's a long way off. I guess in Ether's favor. Okay, well, I don't like the 3-month supply. It does have multiple CME gaps to close, so maybe it'll come all the way up here. And maybe we are just doing a massive range thing. And similarly, in its favor is all the miners and the institutions and people are buying it. So I know everybody's quite bullish on Ether now, but for me, just based on I just try and stay strict to my strategy, because I just don't think maybe I'm wrong, maybe this will go up, and I can argue, or people could argue with me, that when we had this 2-month supply here, you know, and I wanted to be bearish here on this retest, you know, and we ended up going and taking out the high. Like, obviously, I'm not always right, or the market doesn't necessarily do what I want it to do. You know, arguably, this is also in a demand, and the yeah, when things are ranging versus supply and demand, it's challenging, and it's challenging with a massively high time frame demands and supplies. You know, but like you've got something massive like this 3 month supply. But what I do know is the strategy mostly works. So when it doesn't always work, sure, and Bitcoin and Ether are probably the ones that the higher time frame fails most on, probably because there's so much FOMO and stuff, and also I guess because like people are just generally bullish. But yeah, normally you'd get some sort of reaction. I did say at the start of the stream, yeah, that like this could be all the reaction we're going to get off the 3 month supply. You know, it is possible. You know, arguably the same here. You know, we had even less reaction here, or even shorter. At least that's a longer consolidation. But here, I'm very short consolidation off this 2 month supply. And or am I thinking of here even? You know, again, monthly supply here. I think this was a monthly. And again, just very little before just running straight through it. So, you know, maybe we're going to get exactly the same thing now. Who knows? Yes. Anyway, yeah, I do need to sign off because it's 7:10 and I've been doing it for a couple of hours and I feel bad because you've just arrived. But you're going to have to watch the playback, and then you won't get the joy of talking to me. But yeah, again, it's sort of similar to the last stream anyway. I did Bitcoin and Ether at the beginning. I didn't do, I did all the market cap stuff actually right at the end this time, and then a whole bunch of stuff on the majors, and you know the hitting of Link being at sort of 6 month supply, and ADA at 2 month supply, and obviously that potentially, obviously we can go higher inside the zones, which obviously we are to start with. But I'm just really interested to see what the reactions are, and we've got supply versus major supply versus higher lows, and is the difficulty. Is the BTC breakout backed up by good data? No. So yeah, that was the other thing. Again, you can watch that right at the beginning, but no, yeah, there was some ETF buying a little bit yesterday. So a little bit on BlackRock and a little bit on ARK, or ARK, sorry, but not much. So no. And then similarly, it's so we are getting, so yeah, I mean, so if I zoom in, it looks like we had decent spot buying. So I guess we do have on the lower time frames, we do have some decent spot buying, but it's still, when I zoom out, clearly there's nothing. So on these CVDs, there's nothing, and this aggregated stablecoin contracts, yeah, there's a lot more. Obviously, it's all being driven by the stablecoin derivatives, from what I see. And we've had a lot of longs go in, and a lot of top longers, but we did also have, like, so again, I commented at the start of the stream that we had a lot of top longers, but we had a lot of shorts that still, well, the shorts are kind of slowly closing, but every run we have shorts going in, and the start of the run that we had, it's not loading now, but the start of the run we had when I started the stream, there were a lot of shorts going in, and they weren't taken out on that kind of first wick. This isn't loading. Oh, there we go. Looks like it's still going up there now. I reloaded the page, but yeah, let's see if this breakout is supported actually, because I guess I haven't. So when I did talk about it at the start of the stream, we were just kind of coming into here in the first bounce. But yeah, so I'm on buy a bit at the moment, but you can see obviously longs have been coming in heavily, which is what we want for then potentially a reversal. But obviously we still need the structure to show that. And then some shorts have gone in, but they haven't. A few of them have been taken out now on that last pump. Where are we up now at 113,800? You can see again, like, Binance has so many shorts going in, but they're not getting stopped out or liquidated. So a lot of longs, but also a lot of shorts. So I'd really like to see those shorts like liquidated before we drop. That would be the normal chain of events. Just refresh this. Obviously, we've taken out all those liquidations. So I talked again about the liquidations here at the start, saying I think we would at least go up to 113, where we take all the liquidations out. So we have done that, gone up to 114, leaving a lot of longs below. And then the other thing I talked about, which you missed, was I was looking at a lot of the percentages, and where I wanted Korea to go. So I've said this before, and this is now finally, I've said it a few times, but obviously taken a while here, but it's finally playing out. Obviously, I wanted Bitcoin to go into this 113 to 127 area, and it's just at the moment just tapped to the bottom of the 113 for that failed wave if we're going to get a rejection. But I also ideally want to see Korea, and I looked at the start of the stream also on the euro pair, the pound pair, the yen pair, all of those haven't broken all-time high. And I don't know if that's just a product of the US dollar DXY weakness. Or and whether they're going to catch up and whether we're back like in 2021 that we had to wait before we were going to get a rejection. So we had Bitcoin US dollar pair was just kind of doing its thing, and then before we got the overall rejection, we had Korea like take out the high first. So I need to start going back to the Korea premium as well and see if that's picking up now. It was poor yesterday. But yeah, I looked at these percentages, kind of like 2.9% from where we had yesterday's high to the next zone on Korea, and where the US dollar pair would be at that point in time. And 115 was kind of where, if Korea just gets to that 5-day supply there, and then obviously it can go higher, and then so it was 115, 115, 116 with the first two kind of projections on Korea. And again, the percentages don't have to be exactly the same. This is obviously assuming dollar Korea pair remains static, which obviously it doesn't. But then the bigger one is if Korea is going to take out all-time high as well, it's got to go 8%, and that would take the US dollar pair to around 120k. But for the first instance, I was kind of looking at 115, but ideally with confluence of US dollar either hitting the zone it's just currently approaching now, or this monthly below that it hasn't quite tested. But yeah, anyway, so we're just hitting the red box. So let's see what happens here. As I said, like we had that 8-hour demand. Look for that to flip or something now. I mean, we're kind of far above that now, but we need a lot more before looking for shorts. So be very careful if you're shorting. Anyway, I hope that's useful. Thank you for joining me, Aussie Man, right at the end. And yeah, I will maybe do a stream over the weekend if we get significant movement, if something happens, possibly not tomorrow. But yeah, or not, if not, see you next week. I hope at least I've given 1,000 alt possibilities for alt trades, and at least the indecision with structures. But yeah, if you enjoyed the stream, please like and subscribe, and please feel free to follow my Telegram, and you can put any questions in there or requests if you want me to chart something specific. So yeah, and have a good night, and ciao, Aussie Man.